Good evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock, and this is the regularly scheduled council meeting for the month of July. Lori, will you please call the roll?
Mayor D'Ambra.
Here.
Vice Mayor Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Brandon.
Here.
Councilmember Prince.
Here.
And Councilmember Young.
Here.
Okay, the invocation is Vice Mayor Stone. I believe he's going to have Pastor Paul do the invocation this evening.
Correct.
Well, let's pray together. Father, tonight we gather again as we do every second Thursday of the month to conduct the business of your village. And I ask, Father, for wisdom and insight and guidance and direction for those who sit before us tonight, that you have sovereignly placed, Father, to lead us and guide us and direct us. I think it'd be good, Lord, if we would just pause for a moment or two to remember those incredible men and women that are in Surfside right now at this most horrendous, horrible accident, and facing things we can't even begin to imagine. Even our own here, Father, one of our own firefighters going on every day, spending time there looking for people and all that. And so, Father, I just tonight, all of us in this chamber, pray for those families, God. Can't imagine such a thing. And for those credible personnel, first responders there, Father, working so hard. And the stress that they're under, Father, is unimaginable. So I pray for them. We all tonight, Father, pray for them and their families. And we just don't have words, Father. May you, the God of all grace and peace, just fill their hearts and spirits as only you can do, Father, tonight. I pray for a good meeting tonight, God. I'm thankful for all of our employees, every one of them, all of our public safety, Lord, and just for just such a great place we live. Sometimes we take this place for granted. I sure do. But Father, I'm so thankful for this team of people that you put together to lead us and to direct us and to govern the business of this village. Give us wisdom, Father, tonight we pray. And we think of those men and women, Father, again, in harm's way overseas, places that are very dangerous, God, protecting our country, protecting our freedom. We pray for them as well tonight, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
The first person we had listed for this evening was a presentation by Senator Powell. Is he?
I am Christy from Senator Powell's office. It's on his flag. He'll be in 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and move to the second item, and when he gets here, we'll defer back to him. Thank you. The second item was a letter of endorsement request for the Loxa-Lucie Preservation Initiative. Ms. Genco Dube, I believe, is not here this evening. They're asking us to consider basically a letter of endorsement or a resolution to support this initiative. Do we have, as a council, how does everybody feel?
I'd like to make a recommendation that we actually give this to our environmental committee and get a recommendation from them first.
Okay. How's everybody else feel?
It's fine with me.
Bruce, that's good?
Sounds like a great idea to me.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so we'll refer this over to the EAC, and we'll have them take a look at it first. Number 3 on the item was I'll call it a petition. It doesn't actually meet the formal requirements of a petition, but it was from 50 of the residents in Tequesta Country Club, and it had to do with their road situation. I'm going to read this into the record. Obviously, as everyone knows, we do have a program underway to address the village roads over a period of time. So we'll start with this petition, and I'll have a couple of comments, and then we'll defer some discussion until we get to the standing reports. Mr. Allen, attached, please find a friendly petition requesting early scheduling of road milling and paving in the community of Tequesta Country Club. It is our understanding that the program has a 20-year completion, and our neighborhood requests to be scheduled in 2021 due to the hazardous conditions of our roads. Our roads are used not only for vehicular traffic, but also pedestrians, cyclists, and more, and we do not have sidewalks. Thank you for your attention to this request submitted by Michelle Shiros on behalf, how do you pronounce it? Shiros, thank you. On behalf of the TCCA Board and members of the Tequesta Country Club community. We do have, as I mentioned earlier, there's a needs assessment that's been done throughout the village to look at all the roads within the village. The intention is to basically follow through with that needs assessment. This is not a political issue. We're not going to play favorites with respect to one area of the village or not. So that needs assessment is really the basis for which we're going to move things forward. We'll have. I'm going to ask Doug Chambers and Mr. Allen to maybe address this a little bit further, but we'll do that, like I said, when we get to standing reports. We're going to add a fourth item. Lori, I think this is for you, and this is to recognize Molly Young for some training that she's gone through.
That's correct. The Institute for Elected Officials is specially designed for newly elected officials. The primary objective of the IEMO Institute is to provide elected municipal officials with an intensive academic program that will assist them in effectively meeting the requirements of their elected role. The program offers a comprehensive overview of Florida municipal government presented by a faculty of top professionals in the field. Course curriculum included the structure and function of cities in Florida, effective council member techniques, taxes and revenues for municipal government, intergovernmental relations, and Florida ethics and open government laws. Congratulations, Molly, on completing this course.
Thank you.
I know how busy your schedule is, so taking the time to go through that, I know was a challenge, so congratulations. Moving on to the consent agenda, do I have a motion for approval?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Okay, second? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and again, when Senator Powell arrives, we're going to suspend and defer to him regardless of where we are at that point in time. Okay, the next up is communications from citizens. Do we have any cards that have been submitted that are not on a topic that we're going to discuss later on the agenda?
I don't have any cards at all.
Okay. Okay, moving on, communications from council. Who would like to start this evening? Molly, I'm going to look to you to
I
start.
don't have any communications.
Okay.
I don't have any either.
Vice Mayor Stone? Councilman Prince?
The only thing that I've got is that I was under the understanding that we were supposed to do the city manager's annual review tonight, and it was pulled off the agenda. And it's also my understanding that it's in his contract that we are mandatorily supposed to review him on an annual basis, which is this month. So I want to know if we contractually have not obligated to, the city has not, or the village hasn't abided by the contract that we have with him. And secondly, why did we pull it off of the agenda if it was supposed to be done this month?
So this was discussed with the village attorney, and he didn't feel like we were in violation of the contract. We are going to do the review. We're going to do it in August. The agenda looked pretty lengthy this evening, so we decided just to defer it to the month of August rather than tackling it this evening.
So he said that we aren't in violation of the contract?
He said we were fine to move it to 1 month.
Okay. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. And I don't have anything this evening either, so we're going to move on to standing reports. Mr. Allen?
So I'll touch a little bit on the roads portion. I know we've had some lengthy discussions already. I know Mr. Chambers has presented our road program to the council, I believe on 2 different occasions, but we do have a 20-year road program. This is year 1. I mean, we haven't done I'll say the village as a whole hasn't done a great deal of work with roads. We came up with an assessment for the 20-year roads program. Council has, I guess, I'll say, chosen or has directed to staff that we want it to be faster than 20 years. So while we have a 20-year road program in place, our intent is to move along that faster. We have, put 5 areas together. Obviously, the country club is a lot more intense. There's a lot of issues with the roads out there. It's not just mill and pave like we did across the street. We have stormwater, we have Loxa-Lucie in there, we have the roads. So our plan this year is to continue in that area one, and then do an analysis and engineering for the country club, so that way the following year we can really address those roads. So they're coming soon, at least all the country club roads in area one. I would say if anybody wanted to meet with Mr. Chambers and I just to really go over the details of that plan, and we can. Next year, like I said, we plan on putting $30,000 towards the core samplings and engineering to really move that program along in the country club. So it's coming, it's all part of the plan based on the index of the roads.
Right. Now, we talked about this, it was in your report for last month, but the engineering firm has determined that there is a block grant opportunity because of the conditions in the country club that we are in the process of applying for, as I understand it. You want to elaborate on that a little bit, Doug?
Yes, sure. Good evening. So we do have an opportunity to apply for a block grant, which we're in the process of going through that application. It opened June 11th. The deadline for submission is September 12th. We have a couple of folks from Kimley Horn working on that with us. It is a competitive grant based on a scoring system, and they feel confident that the grant we're applying for throughout the country club community meets those parameters for the grant. So just to touch on what the manager said and Mayor, what you said, throughout the village, the country club community and also the Pines, those two communities have a wide variety of issues. The country club community has more issues because you're not only dealing with milling and paving issues, you're dealing with depressions in the road, you're dealing with sanitary sewer manhole elevation rims that are too high in the road. We don't have connectivity coming out of the community. There are no sidewalks. There are drainage issues. There are flooding issues. You can see folks on a rainy day trying to push their strollers and their carriages through the grass and the water. So if you look at all the communities throughout Tequesta, although there are some roads that are, comparably deteriorating at the same rate, the country club community has the most issues. So you couldn't just go into the country club community and say, we're just going to pave the road. You're not addressing all the issues. So we want to look at it as a complete streets project and address all the issues, not just go and mill and pave a road, because you don't really solve the problem.
And Doug, would it be correct to say then that it's the accumulation of all those issues that basically led to the engineering firm believing that the block grant opportunity was appropriate for
Correct.
That situation?
Yes, the minimum amount of the grant is $2 million. So when you look at the country club community as a whole, we're talking about the entire community from Country Club Drive, all the side streets, Leeward, East Wind Circle, and the main corridor, from North Place to the south entrance. We're talking about the entire community. So that's our goal, to apply for that grant.
I had three things I wanted to bring up while we're all here together. The first thing I wanted to ask you, Doug, was for some of the larger roads, like Gulfview Drive and River Drive, do they have to be done all in one piece, or could you do them half and half?
Well, the 20-year road plan is based upon doing the roads in sections because we don't have the funding.
Okay.
But obviously, if we can get this grant, the goal is to complete the whole entire community. And not just the roads, but the swales, the sanitary sewer, the manholes, the sidewalk.
Right. So that was kind of my second thing is some of our residents who live over there that have been here a long time, they went through the sewer project. They have expressed that the roads were okay before the Loxa-Lucie River District came in and did the sewers. And then that's where all those dips came in after they did it. Then they came in, and I was here for this part, they came in and cut around the manholes to try to fix some of the leveling, and some of them didn't go so great, but they were better than they were. So I would like to have council just kind of included on how is that process gonna go this time when we get to those roads, to make sure that we don't get divots next time, if we have to involve them to do their part underneath the road.
They will definitely be involved in the project as well.
I just want to make sure that council's kind of being included, making sure we
Yeah.
hold them to a high standard, because we don't want it to just repeat itself and then we'll be in the same boat again.
Correct, and we will steer the project, not Loxa-Lucie, not Loxa-Lucie's engineering firm. The village with our engineering firms will steer the project and make sure we get the surveys done, we get the pipes TV'd, it's an all-inclusive project, but we will be heading up the project and completing the project, not
Okay.
a separate entity.
Okay, and my third thing is in reference to the color chart that we have for this year with all the different phases. I love that they're color coordinated. I love that they're done by phases instead of necessarily age, because some of the roads are worse than others with actual holes. What is the plan in the next even year to reevaluate the roads? So let's say a road that's in phase 4 starts to deteriorate for whatever reason quickly, maybe there's a flood or something, and it needs to be bumped up to phase 2 as opposed to phase 4. Are you going to be reevaluating every year, all the
Yes,
roads?
You're correct. Every year it's reevaluated.
Okay.
So like you said, anything could happen on any road at any given time. There's a lot of underground utilities. Matt and his department's doing a great job lining our pipe and fixing all the underground utilities. We do have a repair schedule and plan coming out from Loxa-Lucie River District within the Pines community and other communities to TV their pipes and line their pipes. So some of these roads that are really in need of milling and paving or repair are pushed off right now until our utility departments and Loxa-Lucie can fix their pipe. We don't want to go in there and repair a road when we still have underground utilities that need to be addressed.
Right.
So there are a lot of roads throughout the village. You say, why aren't we paving that road? There are some in the Pines. There's still underground utility work that needs to be completed first.
Okay, I just wanted to express my personal interest in reevaluating on a live schedule, basically, because sometimes things might happen and one road might need to be bumped up.
Yep, every year it'll be reevaluated, yeah.
Absolutely.
And throughout the year as well.
One thing I would ask is, what's the current or ballpark cost for to repave the mill road for a mile?
We are looking at around $150,000 per mile.
And then,
That's just straight mill pave.
very simple, yeah.
Right.
How many miles of roads do we have?
We maintain 23.5 miles worth of road.
Okay. So that, basically what we've budgeted right now is just to mill and pave all our roads, nothing to do
Correct.
strictly major construction. So if we want to do that construction, to do it, we need to increase our budget for
Yeah.
that amount.
Even the roads we just repaired, it wasn't a straight mill and pave.
Correct.
We had a lot of other issues we had to address first. Driveway aprons higher than the road profile, edge of road deterioration, we had to put in flush header curbs. There was a lot of other work that went into that, so it's not just strictly a mill and pave. So you do need additional money to address your road projects.
More money.
Yeah. So just on the capital improvement plan that we have, we're only including mill and pave.
Right.
So we're not, we
Right.
need to beat that up if we want to actually be able to, assuming we don't get any
Right, but
grants.
it's great, we have a plan.
Yep,
And we
it's
have
good.
funds, and we're addressing these issues, and like I
Start.
said, Matt's addressing the underground utilities, so, all these combined efforts and applying for these grants that are available to us are all important.
Yeah,
We've got, what, $250,000 allotted for each year for doing the paving?
Right now, yes.
Well, in the Tequesta Country Club, on the $2 million grant money, we have no obligation to, or of any participation that we have to pony up a certain amount to get the 2 million, or is it just a free and clear 2 million?
You don't have to, however, it is a competitive scoring grant. And so when we go through sort of all the buckets in the scoring system, depending on where we are and what we think as far as how we're going to score, it might be in our best interest to put up some funding as well.
So that we could get more than 2 million?
We can get more than 2 million, yes.
Yeah, 'cause if you haven't already done an estimated cost analysis on the utility side of it, I can foresee it costing more than $2 million
Yes.
to go in there and even to do the repairs of the utilities. You're looking probably close to $4 million, in my
Exactly.
opinion, just to get the repairs done. Then you got to go in there and do your mill and overlay. What's left of the roads? Because they're going to tear it all to, just to get the utilities repaired and stuff.
Yeah, we're looking at $4 or $5 million, but the
Yeah.
minimum amount you can apply for is $2 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think too, when we get to the budgeting process, depending on, we'll have to consider opportunities with the CARE Act funds that we get, that we might be able to address or target some money, increase monies into the roads possibly, and if we felt like that would make a difference in procuring that block grant, that might be something we want to do. Clearly, if we're able to get the block grant, that's going to allow us to accelerate the whole roads project significantly.
And also, if you're able to do that, that's going to also decrease our estimation on our water main replacement too, because all the water main in there, and Tequesta Country Club was put down in what, 57? So that's 64 years old, so if
Yeah.
we're able to get some of that, then that's gonna take off some of the, you know, projections that we're gonna need in the future for the water main projection, which is kind of a big deal for me to get that water main protected on it, so it might work out good.
But, you know, I think the important element here, and you guys are all touching on, is the fact that in a lot of areas, it isn't, as Doug said, isn't just a simple mill and repave. If the foundational elements underneath the roads aren't fixed first,
Yeah.
we're going to continue to have the problems with the road, so we've got to address the entirety of the situation, so. Molly, did you want to add anything on this?
Just, do you know the cost if you have to redo the subgrade? Like, say you have to redo all the subgrade because that's failing.
If we had to do a full depth reclamation of the road, you're doubling your cost.
Can you keep that in mind?
Hmm?
It said we would need to keep that in mind.
Yes.
I mean, I'm assuming, I don't know if they're done yet, but you'd be doing coring, like cores or borings to determine that.
Right, we haven't started that yet.
Yeah, okay. So just keep that in
But
mind.
that's what the $30,000 engineering study will
Right.
do for you.
Yeah, as soon as the funds are available in the new fiscal year, we'll start the core sample.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
Jeremy, did you have anything else you wanted to touch on this evening? Or?
No, sir, I can yield my time to Mr. Powell.
Okay. Senator Powell, welcome very much. We're glad to have you here this evening.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here. I am State Senator Bobby Powell Jr., representing Senate District 30 in Palm Beach County. Thank you all for extending me the opportunity. Congratulations to Mayor D'Ambra.
Thank you, sir.
This is my first time seeing you here as mayor, and quite frankly, I'm kind of glad to be out once again. We were in session, and we were in the midst of the pandemic, so we didn't get a chance to really be around a lot of people. This is our PowerPoint presentation. I'll go through it rather quickly, and then I'll be able to answer questions and kind of give you some input. You'll see here that the first slide is me wearing a mask. That is what session looked like this year. We started session at the beginning of March, the first Tuesday in March, and it's a Senate-issued mask, but for the most part, no one was allowed to come inside of the Senate building unless they were a senator or a staff, and anybody from the public who wanted to speak or address the Senate ended up having to go down the street to the convention center, the Donald Tucker Convention Center, to speak to us via TV screen, which was not so personable. As a matter of fact, it was very difficult for some of the constituents and stakeholders who wanted to speak, because at this point, as I'm standing here in front of you, if you want me to finish up, you can say, hey, Senator, finish up or wrap it up. But at this point in Tallahassee, when the chairperson said wrap it up, if they didn't wrap it up immediately, the chairperson could say, okay, hit the button and on to the next person. So, and it happened quite frequently, so it was not as jovial and as open as it has usually been in Tallahassee. Of course, I am the senator for this area and the only AICP certified planner in the legislature, and I currently work for the firm Urban Design Studio. We went back to our legacy name. Here we go. This is a little bit different. Senate District 30 encompasses all of these municipalities. Outlined and highlighted here is the village of Tequesta, but we have several other municipalities that we represent. We go right up here to the Martin County line. We go all the way down to the end of the city of West Palm Beach, over to the town of Palm Beach and Royal Palm Beach. So we get all those areas. Over 500,000 people within this district. The process, as you know, there are 120 representatives and there are 40 state senators. I heard the conversation with regard to some of the infrastructure here in the village. One of the things that you all can do in terms of funding, doesn't work every time because we're limited, and as you may have seen, we'll talk about this later, the governor did veto a lot of money from Palm Beach County, but we can apply for funding from the state with regard to infrastructure and road projects, and it's not guaranteed that we'll get it, but it gives us an opportunity. I think it's me and Representative Snyder who can work together to make sure that we try to get some of this appropriation money back down here to the district. There are 16 Democrats, 24 Republicans in the Senate, and we as senators have unlimited bill slots. However, we are limited by the fact that we have to have a sponsor in both the House and the Senate, and House members only have 7 bill slots. So we have to have a sponsor in the House. We can sponsor as many bills as we want as senators, but if we don't have a House sponsor, it's not going to pass. However, caveat, the legislature has been a magical place. There's been some time where a very important bill to leadership has made it to the Senate floor or the House floor without having a House sponsor or a Senate sponsor. The 60 days that we're in session are pretty much the most dangerous days of the year in the state of Florida. This is me. I serve in 2 leadership roles. I'm the chairman of the Florida Legislative Black Caucus, as well as the Senate Democrat leader pro tem. There you see pictured is former leader Audrey Gibson, and also now, at this point, former leader Gary Farmer. He's been replaced by Senator Lauren Book. This is an interesting picture here. It shows you the committees that I sit on, and one of the poignant points is you'll see my hand is on my head. Generally, after coming through the Appropriations and Rules Committee, I walk around with my hand on my head quite often because there's a lot of information that we have to digest. The Appropriation and Rules Committee are the most important committees that we go through in Tallahassee because every bill that ends up on the floor will have to go through one or both of those committees in order to make it to the floor. So everything that got to the floor of the Senate this year, I saw it before it got there and had an opportunity to digest it, read it, understand it, break it down. But I also sit on Commerce and Tourism, which deals with all of the commerce and tourism throughout the state of Florida and some of the most important agencies like Department of Economic Opportunity, Visit Florida, and the other entities that, the ports that keep the economy here in the state of Florida moving. Community Affairs, which is important for our municipalities, that deals with a lot of local issues. What you'll find, if you've been paying attention to some of the things we've done this year in the legislature, there was a lot of preemption. I think this is an interesting committee because for me, I am an urban planner, and I pay a lot of attention to what happens with local government. I really do believe that we've elected people to have home rule, right? The state should not be preempting almost everything they want to preempt to the state. It happened several times this year, and it went through this committee. Criminal justice, very important this committee this year. And then I'm also the alternating chair on the Joint Committee of Public Counsel Oversight. Major session issues, in no particular order, were HB1. That was the priority of the governor, which was called Combating Public Disorder. It's also called the Anti-Protester or Anti-Rioter Act, whichever one you prefer. Senate Bill 90 with regard to elections administration. That was not only a hot topic here in the state of Florida, but that was a hot topic all over the nation. House Bill 7051, police reform. Senate Bill 54, motor vehicle insurance, which has been vetoed. That was getting rid of PIP and switching to a mandatory BI coverage. And then these are just some of the local government preemption that we saw this year. Not all of them. If we listed all of them, this would be an entirely different report with too many to list. We had code enforcement, fuel retailers, preemption of occupational licenses to the state, and then, which is important to local governments, impact fees. In a nutshell, impact fees can now only change once about every 4 years. This is the update with regard to the anti-protest legislation. It creates a new crime of mob intimidation, where there's 3 or more people who get together. If they feel that they're forcefully compelling someone to accept or take a different position, that can be considered mob intimidation. It falls right into the definition of riot, which is very broad as defined here. It also requires any person who's arrested during this time to sit in jail overnight or at least until first appearance. And then this creates additional civil penalties for obstructing roadways. Originally, there was language that would have said if someone was obstructing a roadway, they could be run over, but that was found to be unconstitutional. And then municipalities have waived the right to sovereign immunity if they breach their statutory authority to allow law enforcement to respond to what is considered a riot or protest. That's important because if you as a municipality decide that you're going to what they call defund the police or reduce police budgets, this was a long conversation. Even when it was budgetary time, it could impact you in terms of your funding from the state. This particular item also allows for your state's attorney to file a complaint or file charges against a municipality. It had some complications, and this is actually in the midst of a lawsuit right now. Senate Bill 90, voter restrictions with regard to legislation. This deals directly with vote by mail. As you know, this year there were a lot of people who voted by mail because we're in the midst of a pandemic. One of the things that this does is to make sure that anyone who votes by mail or wants to use a drop box can only use a drop box during the early voting hours or during the hours of an election, and it has to be manned. The impact on some of us would be like for me, for most of the session or most of the election, there was a local election. I live in West Palm. During local elections, we don't generally have early voting. And I was home for a weekend and I needed to drop off a ballot. So before I hopped on a plane to go back to Tallahassee, I was able to go by the supervisors of elections office and put that ballot in the drop box. In this particular case, the way we've changed the law, my option would be either to entrust that with my wife and have her drop off my ballot, or stay here in West Palm Beach or stay here in Palm Beach County until the day of the election to make sure that my ballot gets counted. It also prohibits anyone from merely possessing a vote-by-mail ballot regardless of the reason unless they are authorized by law or they are a member of the immediate family. Immediate family is defined as a sibling, mother, father, or grandparent. It does not encompass any cousins, aunts, uncles, or close friends who may share houses as a roommate. One thing that was not mentioned, we talked about this, there were sham candidates who were put in races all throughout the state of Florida. It resulted in 2 people being arrested in Miami. That was not a part of this particular piece of legislation. Police reform. This was a priority of the Florida Legislative Black Caucus, the Democratic Caucus, and the Republican Caucus, a bipartisan effort to protect the community and protect police officers with regard to the answer to things that happened with regard to George Floyd and the summer of last year. So all of these different entities got together, law enforcement got together with the caucuses, with the state, with the legislature, and they came up with a series of standards that were being put in place to make sure that what happened in, I can't think of where George Floyd was from.
Minnesota.
Right? Minnesota. What happened in Minnesota doesn't happen here in Florida. It implements minimum standards for law enforcement officers and correctional officers, limiting chokeholds. There's a duty to intervene and disclosures on employment applications, meaning that if law enforcement has anything in their background, they have to disclose it on an application if they're going to a different agency. Independent investigations of data collected on the use of force incidents from different agencies. It changes the minimum age of arrest. Right now, there's no minimum age, well, there was no minimum age of arrest. Now that moves to 7 years old because there was a 6-year-old by the name of Kaya Roll who was arrested. And then the mental illness training for law enforcement officers allows law enforcement officers to implement mental illness training as part of their CLEs to identify people who may be suffering from a mental health crisis, which could result in saving someone's life. Because what we've seen is, especially now going through a pandemic, more and more people are suffering from mental health crises. And if you're not able to identify it quickly, you could feel threatened and someone could end up seriously injured. Motor vehicle no-fault insurance. Lawmakers this year, we approved ending Florida's no-fault auto insurance system. Under this bill, motorists would no longer have to carry a PIP. It would move to a mandatory BI, mandatory bodily injury. The governor recently vetoed that piece of legislation. Don't worry, I got a feeling. I've been in the legislature as an elected person for 9 years. I served, I think, 3 years as an aide, and this has been the talk the entire time that I've been in Tallahassee. So I believe this will be back over and over again. And they got it through for the first time this year. The governor vetoed it. I believe that it could happen again. They'll probably have conversations with the governor, but do not think that this is going away. This is where, you know, I think they're trying to move to getting rid of PIP and into a mandatory BI system. Local preemptions. This impacts our local governments. The impact fees bill, which is at the bottom, I think it's the most important one to me because I work in the field of planning. This provides specific limitations on the amount that local governments may increase their impact fees. These limitations operate retroactively to January 1st of 2020. 2021. There's a number of ramifications and variables within that particular piece of legislation, and it's important to note that it can happen once every 4 years, and you have to have a reason, a specific reason to increase those impact fees, and it's a lot of red tape that's been put in place to reduce impact fees or stop that continued growth. So when you think about your road projects and who's going to fund them, it will be a burden shifted, now not to those companies or those developers who want to come and develop something, but it's shifted to your population, those people who are living in the community. Code enforcement, this prohibits anonymous complaints. So anyone who anonymously complains will no longer have the satisfaction of not being identified unless there's an imminent threat to someone's health, welfare, or safety. This is a new threshold that's been put in place. Fuel retailers, this prohibits local governments from adopting laws or policies prohibiting the siting of or redevelopment of fuel retailer related to transportation infrastructure. Basically, you can't say that you're no longer allowed to have a fuel place that doesn't do normal gas, right? And the preemption of occupational licenses. This prohibits local governments from requiring a license for a person whose job does not substantially correspond to that of a contractor or journeyman type license. It prohibits that and preempts it to the state once again. Now this is important because we're coming up with all these preemptions, and every time you reduce or release some of the regulations that local governments have had control of, you're making it easier for issues that may affect the local area to be impacted. Every area of the state is different. Palm Beach County is much different from Miami-Dade and much different from the LA part of the state, which is the lower Alabama part up north. These are pieces of my legislation. Many of them moved in forms of other bills, unemployment compensation. A lot of parts that I had in that bill were moved in Jason Broder's bill. Electronic legal documents tightened up the way that we deal with online notarization. Minimum age of arrest, that was in House Bill 7051. The waiver of the fees for affordable housing construction, that did not go anywhere, but it was an ultimate alternative to look at ways to save funding with regard to affordable housing for municipalities, directly to the municipalities, not to the state. Mental illness training, that was also in 7051, and then background screening, which is a ban-the-box bill, which is a national issue that's been talked about frequently, eliminating the choice on the first application to say whether someone has been arrested, but not eliminating background screenings as a whole. Some of the budget highlights. We had a $101.5 billion budget. The governor, in a nutshell, cut $1.5 billion out of that budget. On the day that he cut the budget, I felt that the $1.5 billion came exactly from Palm Beach County, but that was not the case, but we did feel the brunt of it. We received an increase in the budget this year, what they call federal government dollars, $9.3 billion, almost $10 billion from the federal government. So some of our municipalities in Palm Beach County, because we were under the auspices that, well, we just went through a pandemic, we're gonna be tight on the budget, we may not apply for some of the funds, and some of us did not put in for appropriations requests, and because of that, we lost an opportunity. So what I'm telling you right now is the time to get with myself and Representative Snyder to put in appropriations requests to see what we can get. Maybe we don't get anything, but you never get what you don't ask for. And then I've already said it there, the governor vetoed that $1.5 billion. And this is my staff. We've got Diane Andre, JD, Kirsty Miles, Esquire. Both of them are here with us right now. And Christopher Stubbs, who is not in today. And our number is 561-650-6880, and our email addresses are right there. We're always available. I call this team GTJD, get the job done. But our motto is a life of service, a life that counts, and I'm always willing to work with anyone who wants to make sure that we're moving forward with regard to local government, our state government, and even our federal government to put us all in the same place to get things done. With that being said, if there's any questions, comments, or conversation, I am here. Thank you all once again for allowing me to come up to the village of Tequesta to give you all a legislative update. I look forward to coming to this every year. Unfortunately, last year we were in the midst of a pandemic, but I'm glad to be back outside to enjoy talking to people, meeting up with you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Powell. Council, I'm going to open it up for conversation.
I'd just like to make one comment. It was very impressive what you just went through and all the commitment it looks like you've put into the state here in Palm Beach County. I don't see how you had time to do anything with all the things it looks like you got accomplished. It was very impressive for me.
Thank you, Councilman.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say thank you to your staff, because I know how much work that they do to help you.
Absolutely.
Everything behind the scenes. And thank you, ladies, because I know you guys don't get thanked a lot.
That's right. Without them, nothing happens. I mean, they're there early, they're there late. They get the job done. GTJD.
Vice Mayor Stone.
Yeah, once again, thank you for the work that you've done. I know that I think that you might have a comment or two about Tequesta Park.
I probably will.
As a group, we've all supported, so.
Molly, did you?
And no comments, just echo, thank you so much for your time and coming up here and talking to us. Really appreciate it.
You and I are scheduled for discussion tomorrow afternoon. I've already met with Representative Snyder. So the things I said to him, it's a two-way street because we want to do whatever we can to assist and help you as well. I know the three topics that are going to be near and dear to our hearts are the issue of annexation.
Okay.
A second one, we'll talk more about these tomorrow, Tequesta Park. Tequesta Park is kind of in a unique situation because we maintain it, it's got our name on it, but we do not own the land. It's actually leased from the state. So we have a lease that will run for another 30 years. The park is badly in need of development, so you talked about appropriations. I did talk with John about that need as well, and he talked about the legislative committees getting together in September, and that's when the process starts. So he said he was very supportive, and I said I would be discussing this with you as well. It's a jewel that would be open to everybody. We're happy to provide the maintenance costs, but the development cost to really take that park to the level it needs to be at is several $1 million, which we are not in a position to underwrite. And again, it's state-owned land, so it's kind of a very, I know other areas are going to be asking for money as well, but this is kind of a very unique situation that kind of exists there. But like I said, when we get together tomorrow, I can talk to you about in more detail about some of these things. But thank you very much for being here. I want to echo what everybody else said. Very impressive presentation. Ladies, thank you for keeping them on the right track. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
I have one more question.
Oh, shoot.
On there, it looked like that y'all said that you were able to get the impact fees waived for low-income housing.
No, we applied for that. That was one of my bills. It did not move.
Yeah.
That particular bill, I need to rethink about it. What it did was it would allow local municipalities to consider waiving fees, impact fees on their own if they felt that it would be able to save money or save opportunities for affordable housing. Instead, we changed the way we do impact fees. We also did something with growth management. I need to relook at the legislation, but it was another preemption where local municipalities wouldn't be able to determine the facades of homes based on certain demographics, where they put garages, what colors they use, unless they were inside of a PUD or I say PUD, I'm used to saying that, an HOA. That passed, but anything that directly impacts local municipalities being able to determine how to help with affordable housing was not pushed this year. Also, I didn't mention this, but this is a big one. When it came to affordable housing, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, only 48% of the money was allowed to stay in there for affordable housing. As you have probably seen, the realtors have now come up with a ballot initiative to fight to make sure that affordable housing money is used only for affordable housing here in the state of Florida. We have the Sadowski Fund, we call it a trust fund, but there's no trust in that. It's swept every year for any number of purposes, and that has become problematic. There's almost $200 million being spent this year for affordable housing, but that's a drop in the bucket considering that almost $400,000 was put there. And as you know, here in Palm Beach County, the average household cost is going up it seems like every week. I read in the newspaper Monday that it was $500,000, almost $500,000 for a person to be able to afford a house.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's going up,
astronomical.
you know,
Yeah.
and I commend you for that effort because that's a huge problem statewide, but I'm more familiar, obviously, in Palm Beach County and what I try to keep up with that. But it's a horrific problem that we have for people that, you know, that can't afford housing, you know, the American dream, you know, to be able to go out and buy your own home. And so many people, you know, can't go out and afford to buy a home. And I think there's an injustice to them that, you know, the cost of land and the taxes and the insurance and stuff is just, in addition to the cost of the home, it just, you know, it just makes it unaffordable for everything. I really wish that you guys could continue your work, and I know that you will. It seems like you're passionate about that, and it shows, but, you know, it's going to take a lot more people beside you to get it through, and best of luck with all that.
Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
We'll continue working.
I did want to add one other comment. You were talking about preemption, and I said, and it's always, it's curious how, you know, the municipal government doesn't want the county telling it what to do. County doesn't want the state doesn't want the federal government. And yet when you look at it in reverse, the federal government's more than happy to tell the states are more than happy to tell the county's more than happy to tell us. So everybody wants maximum flexibility to address the issues that are most important to their populace. And yet they do want that, but then they're more than willing oftentimes to take the opposite approach when it's coming downhill. So I think that's a challenge for every level of government to try and to maintain that responsiveness to their citizenry. So.
Yes, sir. Mayor, and one of the things I think is important to note is this year, people are not allowed to come into the Capitol. Whether a person is Democrat or Republican, once we get into the Capitol, our issues become our issues based on where we live, right? And without people being able to directly address the legislature with regard to issues in their communities, the legislature, we were able to pass a lot of preemptions that I believe would not have passed had people been able to come into the Capitol. Some of our neighbors, some of our friends, some of the people who live on our street or are in the same associations as us, some of the same people who are in the League of Cities with us or the Florida Association of Counties looking directly at you and saying, you know, you vote for this, when you get home, you know, you're going to have to deal with it. So that's why I think a lot of the preemptions that would have not normally passed, that would have been pushed but not normally have passed, or were able to pass this year. I'm glad that we're not completely out of the pandemic, but the Capitol's back open, and this upcoming year, I'm hopeful, and it's also the next year that we won't see as many preemptions because people will have to deal with the consequences. So thank you for that.
Okay. Again, thank you very much. Thank you for spending the time and spending it here with us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to resume the regular agenda, so we're still in standing reports. Chief Medina.
Evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, Village Manager, Attorney, and Clerk. This past month, for the month of June, we had officers attend the Law Enforcement Appreciation that was held by First Baptist Church. I had Sergeant Blanc as well as our new officer, Geraldine and Palmieri. We also attended Father Chuck's 44-year retirement celebration from St. Jude's. We just had the July 4th Believe With Me run. We had no issues. Everything went well, which I'm happy about. We also assisted with the Tequesta Country Club Bike Parade. Everything went well, thank God. I always worry whenever we have events like that with children and bicycles and all over the place, but everything went smoothly. We actually gave away Chief for a Day Award, which a 7th grader was able to get, which I'm looking forward to so I can have the day off. I told Councilwoman Brandon.
You weren't there.
We recognize our COPs, as you know, our volunteers, Citizens on Patrol. They do a phenomenal job for us, so I just had a luncheon with them for Tuesday and gave them an award for all their services, especially during this difficult year with COVID. They honestly went above and beyond checking homes, you know, for those that don't stay here during the summer months and everything else that they do a great job for us. I attended, obviously, the Chiefs Association meeting, Law Enforcement Planning Council. I also met with the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the DA. We had a great meeting in regards to how Detective Loney is doing at the DA. In fact, I told the manager today we're fortunate. One of our investigations today, and it's still ongoing, we were able to retrieve $890,000 in cash from a household, and that investigation will continue. But once again, we will be seeing some of that revenue once it clears through the court proceedings. Our Bureau of Land Management stats, we continue to provide service for them. We had 139 contacts and 38 hours of work. The Marine Unit, we continue to have officers out there in the Marine Unit, no longer with Pike, but other officers, Hoyes Rat, Ray Korkowski. We had 195 contacts, 10 vessel stops, and 10 warnings during the month. Training-wise, we all went through firearms and rifle qualifications. They honestly enjoyed it. Sergeant Yildiz does a phenomenal job. I tell him all the time, Keith used to do it, but Amir truly, he has a passion for it. I got a lot of great feedback from him. They enjoyed themselves. The COPs also were trained, thanks to Fire Chief and Andre Dodd, CPR. So all our volunteers know CPR. So God forbid, while they're checking at home, something comes up, they are certified CPR. Sergeant Yildiz and Assistant Chief McGrew were able to train for Power DMS. You all approved it last month. It is up and going, operational. We are beginning to disseminate all our policies. It's going flawless. In fact, I have another meeting Friday with our accreditation manager to see where we're heading in. But I'm optimistic of the progress we're making on that. Palm Beach County Records Training, Amber Krause attended that, as well as the VOT Records Training that was held by our village clerk. And as far as COVID supervisor training, once again by Andre Dodd and Chief Trube, myself, Assistant Chief McGrew, and Sergeant Blanc all went through it. So that's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions?
How many COPs do we have now?
5, 6, 7, 8.
Awesome.
Yeah. If it was 5, we just added 3. Mark, Jeanette, and Rich.
I think I met 2 of the new ones over the weekend.
Did you?
I think they were hanging out. And in addition to Officer Loney, you mentioned he's doing well. What about Officer Eric? Is he doing well?
Eric is a superstar. Mike is just the other half of it.
Who's Mike?
Exactly. We joke with Mike that we're actually going to get Uber, and we're just going to drop the dog off, have the dog get picked up, go to the scene, and then come put him back on it. But no, honestly, Mike's doing a great job. I'm proud of him. The search warrant that led today to the big seizure, that was actually Mike's investigation. So I'm honestly very proud of him. I was talking to him today. He's excited about it.
Good to hear. I just know they go as a team.
Absolutely, they're a team. Absolutely. And then one of the things that the ASAC expressed to me was his gratitude, because they had just recently had a dog that unfortunately was put back to the department, so they were in need of a dog. So it's, at this point in time, it's just utilizing Eric. That's about it. So.
Chief, quick question. FWC had put forth a proposed regulation for the area north of Cato Bridge, which was going to be slow speed minimum wake.
Right.
Is that, and that was holidays and weekends, is that actually in effect yet?
I believe it is.
Okay.
I know I've been privy to the emails going back and forth. I actually met with the Beach Road Association. I've made it. I want to say it is. I know, the officers have been out there, but I want to say it is, but don't quote me on that. I have to confirm it if it.
I think the signs to be put up. I'm not sure if they have.
Yeah, that was my next question, because
I know they passed it, but I don't know if it,
yeah, because they about a week ago, they were out on the boat and they passed me by. My wife and I were out there in the water, and they waved and said, "Are we doing a good job?" And I said, "Yeah," but I know they're not out there all the time, and I know on the weekends I'm still seeing boat traffic that's exceeding, the speed, obviously, and so many people out there. Obviously the concern is somebody's going to get hurt. So.
Yeah, honestly, there is a lot of activity. I mean, it's increased. I mean, just from my short time here, it's increased tremendously, and honestly, that's part of the reason why we increased the additional officers that are Marine certified, just because, there's a lot more people out there, so.
Well, if you hear anything about the signage, because you may be right, I don't know that it's up yet, and you can just let us know when that's up there.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief Trube.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager, Village Attorney, and Village Clerk. We've had a pretty busy month as well. I know the police chief kind of stole some of my thunder there between the CPR class and also teaching a little bit of COVID. So I'm going to start with the COVID. That was a class that we taught twice to basically each department to allow their personnel to be first contact on sick calls. Takes a little bit of the pressure off our infectious control team and allows us to kind of get back to a little bit more of a normal operation. We, of course, remain there to consult should anybody need it. Regarding the tropics, of course, you're aware of Tropical Storm Elsa. We did monitor it through development all the way through landfall. Unfortunately, we did not have to activate. I attended the Fire Chiefs Association meeting. Next month, we'll have our very first in-person meeting in more than a year and a half. So I'm actually looking forward to that. We attended EMS providers meetings and the fire training officers of the Palm Beaches. Those are also back now to being in-person meetings. So again, I think we'll be able to get more things done when we get face-to-face with people. I am scheduled to speak at the Rotary Club on July 27th. Training-wise, we are hosting Swiftwater Rescue 2 class next week, July 12th, 13th, and 14th, with assistance from the First Baptist Church. Additionally, we're sending 6 personnel, or we've already sent 6 personnel to advanced life support training by Teleflex. In this class, they learn more invasive procedures, how to use IOs, how to do crikes, and things like that. They get to do it on the actual cadavers. So it's real good training for our paramedics. C-Shift conducted training with Palm Beach County Fire Rescue Station 18. So again, that's an effort to get out and do quarterly training with Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. And our administrative assistant, Elizabeth Spring, she attended records management training to get put on by the clerk's office, and we're very grateful for that, Lori. Public outreach and public prevention, we also participated in the 4-mile run at Tequesta on July 4th, and again, pretty much without incident, so that was good. The bike parade, yes, Lori, I wasn't there, sorry about that, but next time I'll try to make it. I was busy monitoring that ELSA thing, to make sure we didn't have to actually do the activation. And we also were at Father Chuck's retirement. So at Father Chuck's retirement, I also was able to give the St. Jude's Church a little recognition for their support during the pandemic. As you guys probably are aware, they supported us with a couple of different times when we were doing basically testing and so forth. So twice with test sites at the church. And then pretty much this report changed drastically for me on Monday. On Monday, I received a phone call from Chief Maddie of West Palm Beach. She's the county coordinator for Region 7, the CERT program. So CERT is State Emergency Response and Planning. And at that point, Miami-Dade had requested additional personnel for the Champlain Towers condo collapse down in Surfside. So we went about planning how we could support that. We currently have 7 personnel, 1 or 2 at a time, scheduled to work in teams of 13 for 12-hour operational periods. There's 2 operational periods every day, 12 noon to 12 midnight, and then 12 midnight to 12 noon. So we always have at least 1 or 2 guys on one of those days, on one of those teams. The personnel are working in basically a unified command, and by unified command, I mean there's teams from around the world. I'm sure you've heard there's an Israeli team there. There's teams from around the country, from Ohio and New Jersey and Indiana and so forth. There's also local teams. A lot of local teams have pulled out to allow the other state teams to come in. In addition to that, Region 7, which we're a part of, is supplying additional manpower. So these are firefighters and paramedics from pretty much every department here in Southeast Florida. There's law enforcement, there's environmental protection agency, there's all kinds of people down there on this, what is still a crime scene in reality. It's a physical and mentally challenging job that they're doing. I mean, when I mean physical, I mean back-breaking physical work. It's a 12-hour shift, lifting heavy objects, concrete, steel, those types of things. In many cases over your head. You're working on a pile that is shifting. You're working next to, and the pictures don't do it justice. There's jackhammers, there's cranes, there's excavators, there's circular saws, there's all kinds of noise. There's obviously a lot of personnel. There's up to 200 people working what we're calling the pile at this point every day. Again, unstable pile, falling debris, void spaces, the ability to misstep and fall 20 feet, 30 feet is there. The shifting building, hazardous materials, fatigue, and of course the mental challenge of dealing with just the tragedy of what is Surfside at this point. The last thing I heard was we're up to 60 confirmed dead down there. Since our team has been on site, I'd say more than half of those people have been pulled out. So difficult. We did establish a mental health team to talk to all of our personnel, and we're going through the motions of that. This is an opportunity for us as a fire department to embrace mental health, along with Pastor Paul here, Jason Fawcett, and some of our other guys that are receiving this type of training as peer support, are talking to the personnel as they are relieved from duty. In other words, they get relieved, they go home and go to bed because they're exhausted, and then we talk to them the next day within the first 24-hour period. We're going to follow that up with additional conversations with, again, in-house support. We, of course, have EAP and other things. Along with that, I'm planning to probably bring in a critical incident stress team just to deal with the fact that we have these 7 members that are doing this. Now, I don't want this to sound all negative. The way I would describe this thing, if there is a positive that's going to come out of this, is that we have 7 young firefighters that have a career-defining call, if you will, a career-defining incident. They will learn enormous amounts of things just by the fact that they were on this scene. They can take that information and turn it into something good over a 25-year career. This will result in lives saved, not maybe today or tomorrow, but 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when they're in position to make the decisions. And I think that's important. I also think it's important as a department that we support surrounding agencies. I think it's important that they see Tequesta Fire Rescue on this scene. That could easily be our building or a building in Jupiter, which we'd be at. Think about the enormity of the response. There's 200 people on the pile. I'm told from my guys, there's 5 blocks of rescue equipment, FEMA equipment, outside sources, outside support units supporting those 200 guys. So we talk about the 200, but there's way more than that there. So I just wanted you to be aware of that, of what's going on and the impact it's having in our department right now. And I think with that, that concludes my report, unless there are any questions.
Chief, is there anything you need from us to help support this effort at this point?
No, I probably should have mentioned it's a state emergency response, so it is reimbursable. There may be some ancillary expenses, as I get into mental health and things like that. I'm not 100% sure if we'll be completely reimbursed, but I will cover it.
Okay.
As far as additional support, let me ask the guys that and get back to you. I'm just not real sure right now. This is again, it's a once in a, hopefully a lifetime event. Because I don't think there's anybody that's down there that wants to go through it. I have an emotional letter written by Lieutenant McGovern, and quite honestly, I don't think I'd get through it if I read it to you.
Yeah.
But it's,
Well, as you said, I mean, when these things happen, it goes beyond the reach of any one department, and it's important that you have the team structure set up, the regional structure set up as you do, and if we ever have the need, it's important to know that, they'll be there for us too. So I said, if there's anything you need from us, let us know. Any other questions for the chief this evening?
So while the expenses can be reimbursed,
right.
I know that what they see down there and what they go through, it's not going to be reimbursed. So thank you, Pastor Paul, for reaching out to them and everyone else who's going to help them. And I sincerely thank them for helping them.
I appreciate that. And it's obviously on my mind. It's on our guys' minds. We do look out for each other. It is a brotherhood. It's what we do. We'll get through it. And we'll see that our guys get through it too. And we will be stronger for it. And I do believe that in my heart, or I would have said, let's go do this. So the guys themselves, the reports coming back from Surfside are all excellent. All the teams are in good spirits. They, as you might have expected, there's a lot of pride in this and a lot of, they want to be there. These guys, and these 7 guys volunteered. I put it out, we asked for volunteers, and I had a full list. If I could get 10 or 12 down there, I would. If Miami-Dade requests an additional 7-day response, we will do our best to put a few more guys into it. I think it's important.
All right.
So,
Chief, thank you.
you're very welcome. No further questions? Okay, thank you.
We're good. Matt?
Good evening. Certainly not as weighty of things to cover. Utilities, we received a payment of $270,000 from Royal Tequesta LLC for fees related to the reserve project, so it's a good sign that that's moving forward. The Crystal Cove Development Forte manager is anticipating to pay theirs in August. We attended the Loxa-Lucie River Preservation Initiative on behalf of the village on June 14th. Most of the discussion at that meeting was around the allocation of their 2021 legislative funding appropriation. Applications for the next funding cycle are due August 2nd, and we're looking at what we can get included on that through the LRPI. First round of backflow device testing letters, reminder letters went out through our new vendor, Aqua Backflow. And then lastly, the raw water pipe paving project was completed. It was wrapped up in about a week. Was very successful. This is the launching station. Let's see if this was one of the pigs, the first one that went through. It's a foam. Okay, get an idea of what they pushed through. It was pushed through the pipe with just with water pressure behind it. There they are, launching it into the pipe. This is our poor recreation of the Williwacky chocolate waterfall. And you know, the important thing is the results here. You can see we got increase in flow from the well, the two sections, increases of 191% and 316% of flow. And when you combine that with pressure and back that into an energy cost, we got a 474% decrease in energy cost from well 7 over here, and nearly 2,000% decrease in energy cost from the others. So it was, you know, that
Well worth
the
the
proof is in
expenditure.
the pudding there. That was the results were pretty were more than I think anybody was expecting. So that's it for me, unless there's any questions.
I think, Matt, y'all should have done that a long time ago. Good job, man.
Better late than never, right?
That's a heck of an increase,
I'll be
or
honest,
an decrease.
I'll be honest, I've learned over my career that the operators and the team that's working with things every day, you're foolish not to listen when they bring things up. Sometimes there might just need to be a little help in articulating what it is that's going on and helping to troubleshoot on how to solve it. But when something's brought up, you're unwise if you're not listening, and this was something that was very important to them, and you can see why.
So I do have a question.
Shoot.
And if an operator brought that to you 3 months, 5 months, a year ago, they should be recognized for the Star Award, if possible, if they haven't already. And then on your reports under the monitoring wells,
Yep.
May and June, there's these.
The chloride levels?
Yes. Tell me what's going on there.
Yep. So good. I questioned that too. There can be some lenses in the lenses of different chloride levels in the monitoring wells. It's not translated into anything in the nearby production wells that we have, but merely just happened to be a more highly concentrated lens that they pulled the sample from. So yes, that stood out to me, and that's why we monitor it. But it's not something that is not something to be alarmed at this point.
I guess I'm having a hard time seeing how that wouldn't be alarming if you have months and months and months of 5,000, now you've got 2 months at 40,000. I mean, I know you're obviously looking at it, but it's beyond my recognition of understanding how that works. But so it's just a random sample that wasn't.
So the The water in the monitoring wells, because it's stagnant, it's not a dynamic, there's not any water pumped out of it. You can develop stratification in there, and so that you can get a lens or a strata of water in there that's, so it's on the radar. It's something that we're cognizant of, and our team is keeping an eye on, and not just from a global perspective, but also is there something related to the sampling that needs to be looked at. But again, at this point, I've been very strongly assured that it's not anything, it's not showing up anywhere else.
Through the process.
Yeah, that's correct.
So how frequently would we be testing this then to see if there's changes in those particular situations?
Yes, the monitoring wells are tested on a monthly basis.
Okay.
And those are, what's reported on there is the highest level of, from the collection of monitoring wells that we have.
Out of all the wells.
Correct.
Okay.
There's one behind the building here, there's one over at Tequesta Park.
So you don't identify which well is creating that spike?
The Tequesta Park.
Got it. Okay. I'm good.
Paul, you got anything?
Nope.
Just one quick question. You talked about the ditch project. I'm calling it the ditch that runs between Jupiter and Tequesta.
Dover Ditch.
Yeah, whatever they call it, Dover Ditch. And I know you said there was, you guys were working together to come up with a plan to address those issues. I was just wondering if there's been any progress on that at this point.
It's on the 5-year CIP. It's actually in one of the projects that's flagged for ARPA funding.
But do we have an agreement with them as to, I guess I'm looking at how far have we gone in terms of reaching an understanding or an agreement as to what action we're going to take, even if it's 6 months off or a year off or whatever the situation may be?
So our team met with a contractor, I think a couple contractors, to look at the site and come up with some options, which gave it, and they provided back some budgetary numbers, which were what we were able to use. As we get closer, we'll be getting something on paper and finalizing what that remediation is, and that's from the Riverside Drive to the where it enters the river there.
To the river there.
Banks are starting to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. That's it. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on to the regular agenda, we have just one change I want to mention. What is item 15 on the agenda at the moment is actually tied back to what is listed right now is 20, which is the change order. So we're going to deal with both of those simultaneously. So we're going to move that one back. Otherwise, the agenda remains as it is. So first item is ordinance number 1121. This is going to be a public hearing. Maddie, would you like to do the honors of reading this for us?
Yes. Thank you, sir. No. There we go now. Nope. It lit up, but there it is.
There it is.
Thank you, sir. Nice to see you all this evening. As you said, this is ordinance 09-21, its second reading. It's an ordinance of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Village Code ordinances at Chapter 78 zoning, Article 9, Supplemental Regulations, Division 1 generally, to create an entirely new Section 78-308 entitled Dog-Friendly Dining in order to allow and regulate dogs within certain outdoor portions of public food service establishments, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 78 zoning, Article 9, Division 1 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, a severability clause, and authority to codify, providing an effective date and for other purposes. This is second reading. I believe there was thorough discussion on first reading. I'm happy to answer any questions if any have come up in between your readings.
Okay. It's an ordinance. It's a public hearing. It's open up to the public for any comments. Seeing none, it's closed to the public. Council, it's open now to the council for any discussion.
I'm good.
Okay. It's closed to the council. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 10 is a resolution number 3521, a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, providing for the annual boards and committee appointments and reappointments. And specifically, tonight we're going to talk about the General Employee Pension Board and the Public Safety Pension Board. Ms. Williams?
2 vacant positions on the Public Safety Pension Board, but one of those positions is considered the 5th member, which will be appointed by the other 4 members on the pension board. We do have 2 applicants for that, and those have been provided to pension attorney. They are not residents, and according to the pension attorney, that position does not need to be a resident. We have 1 regular member position vacant, and we also have 1 regular member position vacant on the general employee pension board. I have 2 applications for the general employee pension board. One is from Rick Sartori. He is here this evening. He will be a new resident of the village on the 16th. Lives in our house. He used to work for the Palm Beach North Chamber and worked with my office and the former mayor with Tequesta Business Association. Then we also have Julie Mitchell in front. She is a 2-month resident of the village, and she is a neighborhood coordinator for the town of Jupiter. So, it's your pleasure.
Okay, and they're both applying for the general employee.
They did, but that doesn't mean that they would be interested.
That's where I was going to go. Well, what we normally ask you to do is just come up, introduce yourselves, and just tell us a little bit about yourself. But I would like to pose that question, since we had, personally, I would prefer a resident to be on these boards. I don't know how everybody else feels about that. But would either one of you consider switching over to the Public Safety Pension Board as opposed to the General Employees Pension Board? You both feel the same way? Okay. We're going to go with ladies first. If you'd like, just come up and introduce yourself. Okay. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background.
Hello, nice to see everybody. My name is Julie Mitchell. My family and I have recently moved into the Tequesta Country Club, which has been made much easier by Counselor Brandon, who has run our page on Facebook and helps us with everything we need moving in. We're doing some fairly significant renovations, so I know the building department as well, and they've been great to deal with. I have worked for the town of Jupiter for 18 years. I'm the neighborhood coordinator there, so I do neighborhood planning and sit as a liaison between neighborhood groups, and I spend our federal funds. So I was just interested in getting started to be involved in the village, besides turning in all my receipts to the front, which I'm expecting some good results from. So it's just nice to meet everybody. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council and village staff. My name is Rick Sartori, and no later than the 16th, next week, I will be a resident at 515 North Dover Road. Here in Tequesta, I'm a native of Palm Beach County, born and raised in West Palm Beach. Been in the city of Palm Beach Gardens for the last 35 years and moving up to Tequesta, as I just stated. My first life, I was a commercial banker. I ended my banking career as director of commercial lending for IBM Credit Union. Went all throughout the United States. The last 5 years, I became more community-oriented. As the clerk mentioned, I worked with Mayor Brennan at the time and the clerk and the local businesses to create the Tequesta Business Association when I was part of the chamber, knowing that being this far away, tucked away in the corner, even if the chamber represented all of northern Palm Beach County, the Tequesta businesses kind of felt a little bit apart from that. So we kind of became very granular in our approach and created that, with the approval of the chamber. I've since retired from banking. I currently work for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department. I'm a community coordinator in their Homeland Security Division. I also do all the liaison for the mental health for at the state level for the Sheriff's Department. Just really looking forward to moving up here, getting involved with our community, and I'd love to serve at the pleasure of the council on either one of the boards. So wherever you feel my background fits the best, I'll be more than happy to serve those with your approval.
All right.
Thank you.
Rick, thank you. All right, so council, any thoughts on which way we go here?
Well, you did mention the sheriff's department. What if we offer you the Public Safety Pension Board?
Counselor, that would be fine.
Okay.
Wherever, again, I'll serve at the pleasure of the council.
Just, I'd be in favor of placing both of them in one of each seat.
One of the two
Yeah.
boards. Okay.
The only question I would have is, would there be a conflict of interest with being employee of the sheriff and then work on the pension side?
No, sir. I'm a civilian employee. I'm not a sworn officer, so there's no conflict with that whatsoever.
Thank you. Bruce, Molly?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, I kind of like Councilwoman Brandon's idea, Rick, of you being on the Public Safety Pension Board. Just given your background, some of the unique elements of that particular board. And I think, Julie, I think you'd be a great fit for the General Employees Pension Board. So if we're all in agreement, do we actually need to vote on this?
You do need to approve the resolution by motion.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we're gonna have to, we have to modify the resolution slightly because, and would you like to do that for us, or do I need somebody?
So
up here?
you can just, as the maker of the motion, could just include in their motion who each person, what board they're being appointed to, and that would be fine.
Okay. So who would like to make the motion?
So I'll make a motion that Rick Sartori places into the open seat for the Public Safety Pension Board, and that Julie Mitchell gets placed in the seat for the General Employee Pension Board.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Julie, Rick, congratulations. Welcome to the boards. We're very happy you guys volunteered.
And I know you guys are newbies, but thank you for getting involved.
Yes, very, very much so.
And I'll be in touch with both of you and some requirement paperwork. And the fifth position, once the.
Right.
Once the Public Safety Pension Board.
Has four.
Appoints that person, right, those four, appoint that person, it will come before you for ministerial approval, but they have that right.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, moving on to number 11. This is another ordinance, ordinance number 11-21.
Thank you, sir. As you said, this is ordinance number 11-21. It is an ordinance of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Village Code of Ordinances at Chapter 78 zoning, Article 11 signs, Section 78-742 exemptions to revise regulations for sandwich board placement, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 78 zoning shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, a severability clause, and authority to codify, providing an effective date and for other purposes. As you said, this is first reading. I do believe this is a result of rather substantial council discussion over the last several months. If you have any questions, they're very minor modifications, but the intent was, and there was requests from business owners, but the intent was to expand and allow for more flexibility with regard to sandwich board signs. So again, the new language proposed is double underlined, the language stricken is the proposed regulation, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. Again, public hearing, so it's open to the public for comment at this time. Okay, seeing none, it's closed to the public. It's now open to the council.
Good.
I had a quick question, sorry, were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna say where, I mean, kind of somewhat originated from the Father Doug from Good Shepherd, in the aspect of he was trying to put a sign next to his building, but his front door was nowhere near the street.
Right.
So that was kind of where one of the changes was.
I know a lot of this happened me being on council too, so all of it did, and there's been a lot of signage discussions in the past. Was anything ever discussed from like an aesthetic standpoint, just a very basic, like minimum requirements on like material used or anything like that?
Yes,
From what
but
I
we never
understand, we
got to
can't
it.
get nitty gritty with like font and style, but some minimum requirements. Has that been discussed? Is that anything we want to consider?
There are some requirements there. Nilsu, do you want to address this real quick?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Your specific question is?
Any requirements for the signs from an aesthetic standpoint, like
Oh, yes.
material to be used? You know, can it be a chalkboard? Does it have to be an actual printed sign? Any kind of requirements?
Our current code includes requirements for aesthetics, you know. Or are you referring specifically to the sandwich board?
Mhm.
Well, the language, do you have the language right there?
Oh, sandwich board sign?
Yes.
Yes, your code currently defines sandwich board sign as a movable sign not secured or attached to the ground, a self-supporting A-frame sign. So there is language already in your code that requires it to be an A-frame sign. And then further down, the definition of sign further expands that it can be a device or a frame. So what we have to be careful of in the regulation of signs is you can place time, place, and manner restrictions on signs, but when we get into regulating content, which even when we get into aesthetics, sometimes you start to get into content if you're requiring certain fonts or requiring specific
appearances that can be construed as content. So that's the dangerous portion with regard to signs. So I think your code, given that you have two definitions, I don't think that there's going to be makeshift signs popping up. I think your code already does specify that they have to be A-frame. So in terms of material, you could put additional language in. However, I will say that this has been through LPA. This is first reading. So to make substantive changes would require going back, if there are significant substantive changes, going back to LPA and starting essentially over.
With regard to the sandwich board, the code right now have specific aesthetic requirements. For example, for a plaza, let's talk about a shopping plaza. The shopping plaza needs to have a master sign plan. That master sign plan has specific colors, fonts, but basically if somebody wants to have just a sandwich board, it's different if they're gonna have a wall sign. If it is a wall sign, the code provides for many more requirements with regard to the aesthetics.
Right, but not for sandwich board. And I simply just bring it up because I know signage has been a hot topic. It's gone around and around. So I would, I would feel like I would not be doing my job to bring it up because we didn't talk about it and say we pass this and then it's back on the table again. So just trying to do some due diligence.
I don't fully disagree with you. I don't know if we would achieve anything if we broke it down, talking about fonts and what it would say, but I could get behind the material of the sign itself, whether it's plastic or a wood frame kind of situation, not the metal stakes that you can fold.
I mean, there's been a lot of discussion on signage. There probably needs to be more. I think, as the Vice Mayor was saying, this specific ordinance had to do with where the placement of the signs could occur.
Right.
Because of the limitation Father Doug ran into it. He's not the only one who's run into a similar limitation. So this was just to provide some additional guidance and just a little more flexibility in the placement of the sign. If we want to go back, and believe me, we have talked about signage in the past, but if we want to go back to signage in general and get into some of the issues you're talking about, we can do that. I would do that separately from what we're talking
I'm
about tonight.
specifically just talking about sandwich boards,
Yeah.
nothing else.
Okay.
The placement I'm fine with.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring it up.
All right. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, number 12, again, another ordinance, 12-21, and ordinance 13-21. These two are related. One is affecting the charter, and the other is affecting the code of ordinances, and this has to do with the timing for qualification for the election. So we can talk about them both together, but then we'll do an independent motion and an independent vote for each one.
Thank you, sir. I do have to read them both by title, so as you go through your agenda, I'll read them both. But as you said, this is ordinance 12-21. It's an ordinance of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the village charter at Article 2, Section 2.02 to adjust the dates for qualifying for the municipal elected office at the request of the Palm Beach County Supervisor of Elections, directing the village clerk to transmit a certified copy of this ordinance to the Palm Beach County Supervisor of Elections, providing that each and every other section, subsection, and provision of the charter of the Village of Tequesta shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, a severability clause, and authority to codify, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Okay. So are we going to read 13 at this point too, or?
I'll read that one
Read it
separately. Yes, sir.
Okay, Lori?
The Palm Beach County municipal clerks have been asked by our Supervisor of Elections office to change our qualifying dates to end no later than the first Friday in December to accommodate statutory vote-by-mail requirements. You may recall we've changed in 2016 about our qualifying period at that time as well. Currently, our qualifying period begins at noon on the first Tuesday in December and runs through the third Tuesday in December. Changing our dates will allow the elections office ample time to program the necessary elections, create and proofread the ballot language, submit ballot templates to participating municipalities for approval, print vote-by-mail ballots, prepare those ballots for mailing, and allow sufficient time for mailing and processing military and overseas ballots, which is a big issue right now. Failure to amend our qualifying period could result in the inability of the Supervisor of Elections to accommodate our election. So My recommendation is to hold our qualifying period beginning at noon on the first Tuesday in November, and through noon on the third Tuesday in November. Any later date in November is going to run into the Thanksgiving week holiday. People are on vacation, people travel outside of the state, outside of the village, they have family and friends in town, so I think you may want to stay away from that week, but that event beyond.
So just for, because I was getting a little confused, your recommendation is the beginning of November, but they put out the date of ending on December 5th.
It has to be done by the first Friday in December.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could do it, you could run it at the end of November.
But I get what you're saying,
But you're running
holidays.
into Thanksgiving there.
Okay, so this is, again, a public hearing. Any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll continue with council discussion. Any further comments or concerns? Okay. Well, since we're reading them separately, we must go ahead and act on this one first. So do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we'll move on to ordinance number 1321.
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Village Code of Ordinances at Chapter 2 Administration, Article 5 Election, Section 2-233 and 2-271 to adjust the dates for qualifying for municipal elected office at the request of the Palm Beach County Supervisor of Elections. Further amending this article to delete obsolete text, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 2 Administration shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, a severability clause, and authority to codify, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Okay, so this is just to bring our ordinance now into compliance with what we just did in 12. Again, public hearing, it's now open to the public. Okay, seeing no public comment, it's now closed, open to council. Lori, did you want to add anything further?
I do. Our charter stipulates that our election is held on the second Tuesday in March of every year. This ordinance also cleans up and amends some of the language in there in regards to the presidential preference primary that's held every 4 years. And since the PPP is held on the third Tuesday in March, the elections office does not like to have back-to-back elections. It's a nightmare to have one election, furthermore, 2 elections back-to-back. So all municipalities in Palm Beach County that have March elections hold our elections on the third Tuesday during the PPP, and that is already in our code of ordinances, and that's just cleaning some of that up.
Okay, so it's just housekeeping. Okay. Any further comments, discussion? Okay, can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
To approve.
To approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, number 14, resolution number 3221, a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, adopting the refuse, recycling, and yard waste collection rates for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022. Mr. Dunkley, this is your item.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, good evening. This item is essentially requesting your approval of the rates that will be placed on the tax bill for the upcoming year, fiscal 22. It represents a 3.5% increase in the rates. It will be going from 157.70 to 163.22, which represents a 3.5% increase. The last time that the rates were increased or adjusted actually was in fiscal 2016. I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
I've got a question. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask it or not, but I've noticed that they've been a little bit slower in picking up some of the yard waste and stuff in the Tequesta Country Club where I live at. I mean, some of the piles will lay there for a couple of weeks, and then actually Monday when they were coming by to pick up my regular garbage, I asked them about why they were having a little bit of difficulty in it, and he said that because of the high constructions and stuff that's going on around it, they're short on the claw trucks, and that they just don't have one available to like they used to and stuff on there. So how does that affect, I mean, if they don't pick it up on a regular basis like they're supposed to, should that not be adjusted to compensate the lack of pickup, in that aspect of it?
I can reach out to Waste Management, I was unaware of that, but I'll get an update for you and see what we can do to get them back on track, or reduce rates or whatever that may be. So give me some time to work with them, and I'll find out.
Yeah, in the past, they've always been very, diligent, about picking it up on specific days. But, one of my neighbors that live on the street there, they tend to put their refuse out in the road rather than on the edge of their yard. And so, my neighbor across the street, she was saying, when are they going to come pick that up and stuff? It's been sitting there for a couple of weeks. I said, no, it really has that. And that's because I don't pay any attention to it. I really do, but I didn't say anything about it. But
You're not wrong. I feel like after COVID year, they never quite got back to the way they were before. I know when we went through COVID, they had, 1 or 2 employees on the truck, and then they had truck issues for a little bit. But he's not wrong. They haven't quite gotten back to their standard that we usually get.
I will find out.
Okay, thank you.
I had just 2 quick questions. I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. So was it the chart you had at the bottom of when the fund balance runs out without raising rates? It looks like we started expenditures or more than revenues starting in 2020. Is that right? Is there a similar chart that shows what this looks like with this proposed rate?
Yeah, this in fact is the proposed rates are reflected here. So if you look at the top, we project total revenues of $500,940, and that's what's reflected on the non-ad valorem assessment column. So in the non-ad valorem assessment column, we expect to generate $500,940, which is expected to not meet the total expenses. We are drawing down reserves slightly, but not as drastically with the rate increase.
What was your second question, Molly?
It was those 2.
Okay. Just to follow on what she asked, we had a fund balance here. This is really kind of a pay-as-you-go account. So I know, so to your point, we're starting to draw down on the fund balance. One, is there any benefit to maintaining a fund balance or a surplus position for this particular account? And 2, if there's not, then I'm assuming what's happening here is rather than hitting everybody with a rate shock, we're adjusting rates. We intend to adjust them slowly as we go forward to eventually eliminate the fund balance and just be on a straight pay-as-you-go scale. Is that an accurate statement as to what's happening?
Yeah, that's the intent. As a matter of fact, that's the very essence of the definition of an enterprise fund. You're trying to cover your costs. And so we've had a built-up, they call it net position in the enterprise fund. Right. So our goal is to bring that down so that each year the revenue is more accurately matched.
And I mean, is there any reason why we would want to carry a surplus in that particular account?
The fund balance,
yeah,
you're speaking?
For this particular fund, is there a reason why we would want to have a surplus there?
Yeah, for exigencies that might come up, but since it's a vendor type contract and we don't have substantial assets to upkeep or the labor cost is not there, we don't expect a significant increase in the expenses. So we feel fairly confident that with the rate increase that we're proposing, we'll be able to maintain.
So what would be, if you're saying there's some benefit to maintaining some type of surplus, what would be the goal then? I mean, what level would we want to hold in that account? I mean, 20,000, 25,000, 30,000? So we get to a point where we're assessing, people are paying what the actual service costs, and then there's some small amount left. I mean, is that where you're headed?
Realistically, this fund doesn't have a significant amount of non-cash expenses like depreciation and so forth. So I would say that so long as the revenues match the expenses, the revenues for this fund, the bulk of it is the payment to the contract,
right,
to waste management. So if you look at it from the flip side, their increase each year is capped at 3.5%.
Right.
And so this year, we're trying to mimic that, essentially. So the end goal is to have the revenues, which is essentially the payments, the revenues that we're getting in out of non-ad valorem receipts equal the payments, the outflow to waste management. The notion of having a fund balance for this fund is not so much as meritorious because you don't have a lot of unpredictable expenses
Right.
as you would with water and sewer. And so, in a nutshell, I would say that the projected fund balance should be minimal, if any,
Okay,
for this fund.
okay.
Well, let me ask you one question. Let's say hypothetically, we got a hurricane and we had a lot of, damage and stuff with debris. And then, of course, they would be responsible, I guess, or some, maybe, some other government agents who would come in here, but would they be the ones that would come in here and clean, excuse me, and clean up?
And Mr. Allen can correct me, I think we have a debris contract. Yeah, we have a separate debris contract.
So we've got money set aside outside of this for that?
We don't, FEMA, they have.
Pays for all of it?
Yeah, they will
Okay.
pay for a significant amount of it.
Mm-hmm.
But if we have an emergency or for debris removal, that's a specific category.
Mm-hmm.
Under FEMA, that would kick in, and it wouldn't necessarily directly impact the residential rate.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, Bruce, we have $1 million between the water and the village. There's $1 million contingency fund basically that we've set aside out of our reserves specifically for emergencies or hurricanes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
we have adequate cash flow. We have, not to say that we're in a very strong position, liquidity-wise, to meet any short-term
Deficit.
emergencies that
Yeah.
might come up on that.
And that's above and
side.
beyond our 2 months of
Yeah,
operating reserve.
right.
Yeah.
So P&J has the state FEMA contract for the state?
We piggyback the contract with the Solid Waste Authority. It's,
Mhm.
We utilize Phillips and Jordan. That's a contract the Solid Waste Authority has. So Phillips and Jordan works up and down the state during a hurricane. We've used them the last couple of years we've had any impact here in Tequesta.
So are they the main contractor for the whole state of Florida?
They're one of the main contractors.
Yeah, because I thought it was like 3 of them maybe or
Yeah,
something.
that's the one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other thoughts? Okay, can I
Yes,
have?
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I
go
think
ahead.
I'm still-
Go ahead, Molly.
So the green chart that says this is the fund balance without raising the rates, do you have the same chart that shows a fund balance if we raise the rates? And is it above and I'm just not reading it right?
When you say the green chart,
It's the backup on this
yeah,
agenda
in the
item.
backup, when it says, it's depicting when we will run out of, when the fund balance will.
Right, so the
Yeah,
green
so
chart on the
down
bottom, so
below.
that's the fund balance if we do not raise the rates.
Exactly, right in the column there where it says not ad valorem assessment, the $500,940 in fiscal 2022, that's inclusive of the proposed rate up top. So that is 163.22 times the 3,197 units. Less the worst case scenario, it's a 4% collection allowance. So we have already baked that into the projection here. So with the new rates, we do project a shortfall between revenues and expenses, but not as significant as it would have been. If we don't increase the rates, we're gonna have a shortfall of about $40-something thousand.
But Molly, if you look at that chart, if you look at 2022, 23, 24, it looks like the revenue number is staying the same. So we've got a rate increase for the first year. But I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think this chart reflects additional rate increases.
It doesn't.
2 and 3.
You're correct, Mayor.
So we would be coming back and increasing them, like the expenses are going to go up 3.5% a year. If we come back and raise it next year and the year after, then that gap will close.
That's with raising the rates. This is.
But only for 1 year.
This is without raising the rates,
For the future years.
for future. I got
Yeah,
it.
just
Okay.
for 1 year, just for the
This
current
is
year.
just So it reflects just this year?
Correct. Yeah.
That's it, okay.
They're showing no
This
change for the
rate.
future years either, at this point.
Yeah, that represents a one-year increase, which is for this upcoming fiscal year. The non ad valorem rules for the state statute, we have to come before you to approve a non ad valorem assessment to be placed on the tax bill, and that's the reason why. In terms of the next fiscal year, for fiscal '23, we'll assess the appropriate rate at that stage.
Okay. Everybody good? All right.
I'm
do
good.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, number 15, again, we've moved that back down to number 20, so we'll move on to the next item, Resolution 3021, a resolution increasing the fiscal year 2021 Stormwater Fund budget by increasing revenues and expenditures in the amount of $30,000 to recognize a grant from the State of Florida Department of Environmental Protection, providing an effective date and for other purposes. Mr. Hammond.
Hello again. From one enterprise fund to another. This one's more of a housekeeping item. Back in May, the council approved a grant agreement where we were awarded $30,000 for the installation of bioswales. This item is, again, just a housekeeping item to recognize that revenue within the enterprise fund.
Any questions? All right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 5-0. Moving on to the next one, another resolution. Did you get it, Lori? Okay. We've got another resolution. Mr. Hammond, this is yours as well. It's 3121, a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta adopting the stormwater utility fees for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022, and authorizing the village manager to proceed in accordance with the village's adopted procedures, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
All right, so this is similar to back in April, where the Water Enterprise Fund was brought to you. There are not nearly as many slides. There's not as many complexities to the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, but it's no less important to the community. Just a little bit of background: the Stormwater Fund is funded through an enterprise fund. Unlike the potable water, the water fund, it serves residents exclusively within the Village of Tequesta municipal boundary. There's a little over 10 miles of pipe, 550 structures, and as we had previously mentioned, a little bit of shared infrastructure, commonly called the Dover Ditch, with the town of Jupiter. Looking at the next 5 years, expenses that the fund incurs, personnel expenses, operation and maintenance, capital, the annual transfer to the general fund. Most of these outside of capital are fixed costs. The variability is in our expenses in this fund are mostly tied to the capital cost that we incur for the year. Looking at a 5-year basis, these are those broken down over a 5-year basis. O&M, personnel, and the transfer to the general fund are fairly stable. That variability that you see is in the CIP. You'll see in the first 3 years there's a little bit higher CIP for those 3 years, and those are directly tied to projects that are tied to the ARPA funding. Revenue for this fund comes through, nearly all of it comes through the non-ad valorem assessment on the annual tax roll. Over the next 5 years, mentioned there is a little bit of ARPA funding that is anticipated to be used here. A little bit of cost share with any projects that are associated with the Dover Ditch, and then if we're fortunate enough to get any grant funding, which we aggressively pursue, those will be recognized here as well. Take a look at our revenues. Plotted with the expenses, with our current rates, you can see here that we're not projected to meet those revenue requirements. The current rates that are proposed before, the current increase that's proposed before you would bring that up to meet those requirements. The main drivers that are affecting the rate increases here are capital projects. Over the last 3 years, there's been a lot of investment that has been made into the system, over $1.3 million. Those are catching up on a lot of deferred maintenance. If you remember from a year ago, we had the blessing and the curse of all those rains between Memorial Day weekend and the Friday 2 weeks later. The curse was it created a lot of headaches, particularly for the Tequesta Pines community. But the blessing was it really provided a snapshot into or stress test the system and showed a lot of the weaknesses that needed to be addressed and failing infrastructure. And so there's been, the council has been supporting aggressively, taking care of those. Upcoming, there are still a number of capital needs that are out there. We previously talked about the Dover ditch repairs, Riverside Drive outfall. There's additional pipelinings that are required, not nearly as much or aggressively as we've done over the last couple years. Some improvements are currently being looked at over in the Fiesta Drive, Cypress Drive area where it ties into Tequesta Drive. Repairs to the North Cypress Drive Stormwater Pond, which are starting to encroach on and potentially provide a risk to the adjacent homes around it. And then we're just dipping our toe into starting to restore the numerous swales around the community. The proposed rates, our current ordinance or the code requires them to be brought annually to the council. These are what's proposed this year is a 10% increase to the current rates. There are different categories. Categories of rates. What I have here are the two most common property categories. So right now, single-family homes in the 2,500 to 4,600 square foot of impervious area would see a $10 increase over an entire year. The next most common would be condos. They would see a $7.30 increase over an entire year. A big factor here in the Stormwater Enterprise Fund is the available fund balance available for emergencies. That has been drawn down significantly over the last 2 years. There still is a fund balance, but it's a big factor or a big goal over the next few years will be incrementally building that back up so it's available. It's available should there be something that would happen, what we had happen last year. Taking a look at the rates compared to our neighbors, it's a little harder to get apples and apples on stormwater because it's applied a lot differently. But looking purely at the base residential rates, you can see that we currently are and will remain in the middle of the pack with our neighbors. So with the requested rate adjustment this evening, it allows continued investment into the deferred renewal and replacements, as well as strengthening the fiscal position of the fund and building back up that emergency fund. With that, happy to answer any questions.
I've got a question. You know, we talked about, you know, the upcoming expenses and stuff of, you know, a lot of the utilities here in the village. And no one hates to raise taxes and costs and stuff, you know, but would it not behoove us to say $10 a year to maybe, you know, $15 a year or $20 a year, and that way it would maybe accelerate some of the upcoming repairs and stuff that we know that we're going to have to be doing at this. And you know, we talked about a 10-year plan and a 20-year plan to replace all this stuff. I mean, would that not help accelerate, you know, some of the you know, replacement of some of the 60-year-old, you know, pipes and stuff, if we were able to generate a little bit more than what's needed just to get us balanced with the upcoming stuff?
Yeah, there's certainly there's always that balance between affordability and meeting the needs and having a strong and stable fund position. While I put up the the most common types of properties there and the impact. These rate increases, or this rate increase does affect the properties with a lot more impervious area. Significantly are some of the apartment complex type, it affects them to a larger degree because they have a larger impervious area. There's always, I guess it's up to the discretion of the council on what, how aggressive we want to be. But I feel that, at least for this current fiscal year, that 10% increase helps, gets us in a good step forward to being able to continue doing the important work that has been done over the last couple of years, and at the same time being fiscally responsible for the community.
But these monies specifically can only be used for stormwater. They can't be diverted into other areas or other need areas, correct?
That's correct. That's just the general nature of the enterprise fund. This was set up specifically for stormwater.
So when you talk about the impervious areas in the apartment complexes, if you actually broke it down per unit, would the per unit impact be any greater than it is? Again, not talking about the complex as a whole, but per unit, would it be any greater than what we're seeing on the screen?
It would be very similar if you broke it down on a per unit basis. If there was the larger commercial properties that have higher impervious areas that wouldn't necessarily be broken down, then that would be higher per quote unquote customer. But you're correct, broken down per the, those are paid by their association or the owner, and so they see the big, they see the big number.
I mean, for the resident, I mean, we're looking at the price of a latte or two at Starbucks over the course of an entire year, so that's pretty de minimis as far, and it meets, the needs that you've laid out, so.
It Sorry, really that just really bothers me with the cost of Starbucks. A lot of people can't afford to get a Starbucks, so I just want to be sensitive with that.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, it's $10 a year.
I know,
so
but
whether it's
some
a
people
hamburger,
are really, really tight budgets.
No, I know, but I'm just saying it's a hamburger at McDonald's or something. It's not, it's a very non-consequential amount. We're talking about 80 cents a month.
Until every little thing is.
Well, I know things can add up, but.
I do agree with what Mr. Prince is saying, but I do think for this stormwater only, I think that this 10% is sufficient for stormwater. I do think the bigger issue is more on the water distribution, water, fresh water side of things.
And I was confused on that. So
yeah, that's a separate.
Still, again, and I appreciate what everyone is saying, because, I mean, I've certainly struggled, with paying my utility bills and my light bills and my car and getting gas to go to work and stuff. I mean, anybody, the majority of us have all experienced those difficulties, but for the good that it would do, for less than $2 a month, I think it would be worth really considering going ahead and getting enough to be done with it for a while, rather than coming back a year from now and saying, and it going in again. And so golly dog, every year y'all increase it, every year increase it. Let's go ahead and really look at it, see what it's going to take to maybe get us through, 2 or 3 years and stuff, where we don't have to go back potentially in a year from now. And one other thing that I wanted to ask you about is that on one of those canals and stuff, I saw those slopes and stuff that are, eroding away. Don't we have a legal responsibility to maintain those slopes, at least on a 4-to-1 slope? Do we have any legal responsibility to keep those at a certain slope?
So it depends on the type of construction. As far as what's typical, I think Mitzi here can on the legal side, but as far as the construction, you're right as far as the slope on typical grass construction. If you take the Dover ditch, for example, that had it's fallen over now, but that had been reinforced with the concrete concrete bags.
Sandbags, I saw that.
Yeah. So there's other as far as riprap. So 4-to-1 would be more typical for just a sloped grassed embankment, but other constructions might have different slopes.
And the only thing I'll add to that is that the bigger legal concern is not allowing property to recede, so not making someone, I don't know where that specific canal was, but not letting somebody's property erode away is the bigger legal concern. The slopes, as he said, vary from canal to canal.
Mhm.
There's not so much a legal requirement for the slope ratio, but it's more just you wouldn't want to allow erosion to continue so long that somebody was actually losing a portion of their property.
Well, I know that on new construction, it's mandatory that you have to build and maintain a 4-to-1 slope down to a certain level. Typically, it's 2 feet below the existing water line. And then at that point, then it can go down to a 2-to-1 slope. So my question is, are we exposing the village by not having these properly maintained on whatever their guidelines are mandated by the state with these slopes and stuff? I guess that's my question.
I think in general, by not maintaining them, I think it's safe to say that we are opening ourselves up, as it's potentially there's a risk there to property damage.
Mm-hmm.
May not specifically be tied to the 4-to-1 because there's different
Guidelines.
construction methods.
Yeah, sure.
But certainly failure to maintain what we're responsible for maintaining, I think it's safe to say that that does open the village up to liability or risk.
Well, and if that's the case, then it kind of substantiates and validates a little bit more the need for this increase. Because obviously, if you had the money to go out there and do all the things that you're wanting to do or need to do, then you would do it. But right now, it looks like to me that we're possibly don't have all the money that we need for the future moving forward.
Well, we're moving forward in certainly working through items that are highest risk and in most need. We were very fortunate to have the fund balance that we had over the last couple of years that the council was able to approve addressing the immediate needs and risks that came up. And so now we're moving forward in tackling those as addressing those as again based on risk, based on cost, and based on condition of the asset. I say often, enough money or enough time, we can accomplish just about anything that you want.
Mm-hmm.
But without the two, then I think what's proposed is intended to be a balanced approach that again is trying to be fiscally responsible for the community, but also not penny wise and pound foolish on continuing to defer and ignore things that need to be addressed.
Well, I guess what I'm struggling with is that I feel like that I would want to have a little bit more information to decide on whether or not that is the right amount or not. I mean, or does it need to be a little bit more than what you're asking for? And so I'd like to look at it a little bit harder and maybe ask you even to do an analysis of what we could do, what needs to be done if you were able to get the increase and stuff and the additional things, and evaluate some of the maybe at-risk situations that we are possibly looking at. I'm not saying that they are, but really maybe look at some of the how this would affect your ability to be able to fix some of the things that are critical and potentially that put us in a liability state.
Matt, are you saying, well, I guess the question is, well, the Dover ditch is kind of a unique situation. That's the one that you showed the picture of. That's, I think, the only situation that truly exists like that, and that's in common with Jupiter. But are you saying that you've done the evaluation and you feel that this is what you need to address the issues as Councilman Prince is raising them? Or would there be benefit to going back and evaluating it a bit further?
I think that based on what we know now, this is this is a good step for the next year. There's there's always additional work that you can do to evaluate, analyze the system. A lot of that ends up costing dollars in doing cleaning and TVing and inspecting infrastructure, which a lot of that has been done. If it if it would please the council, one thing that could be done, similar to what was requested with the water fund, is taking a look for the next fiscal year and perhaps providing some additional, maybe some additional options of based on the funding availability, some additional options at the next go around.
Well, and you mentioned that this doesn't reflect any grants, which, as you indicated, we're aggressively, we had the $30,000 grant, but we're continuing to aggressively pursue others.
That's
so,
correct.
So my takeaway is you feel this is probably the right first step at this time. But to Councilman Prince's point, we can do some further evaluation and make a determination, and you can come back to us with a broader-based assessment of the entire village infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that what's proposed, which certainly there's a lot of care and thought that's put into what's proposed, is what's felt is the right next step, and certainly the next step after that can be evaluated and debated even further.
Okay.
I have a quick question. On the budget we just reviewed a couple weeks ago, I can't remember, was an adjustment assumed in that budget?
In the draft budget that was provided, there was a 5% increase that was plugged in at that point.
So you assumed 5, and were all of these, at least the projects for next year, were they plugged in as an expenditure as well?
They were not in the draft budget, no.
So you assume 5, the projects weren't there, so adding these projects is what increased it to 10 now from a couple weeks ago?
That's not just for next year, but also for the next 5 years.
Well, next year it's 10 though, right? Or
The rate
I'm sorry.
increase.
Yeah. Let me go.
10,555.
Right. So it's 10 for next year, right?
That's what's
Or is
being
that-
requested this evening,
Right.
correct.
So I guess what changed between, and yeah, and the 10's just for next year, then 5 for the following year. So what changed between the 5% on the budget reviewed a couple weeks ago to today?
On the capital side, as I mentioned, the capital is the variable side, and so those the costs of those are we work hard to get those in as in time and ahead, but those are something that specifically on the Dover ditch, getting contractors out to provide costs for those, et cetera.
So the project costs weren't in there, is what it sounds like, in the budget. All these project costs weren't in the budget reviewed a couple weeks ago? Is that what the difference is?
There were, on the capital side, that's correct.
Let me ask you a question. How many of these projects are you planning on doing next year, fiscal year?
There is the tranche.
You added it to the, I think, on the slide here,
Mhm.
on your
Slide 8 or 9.
presentation, yeah.
Yep. So there's the tranche of projects that are tied to the ARPA funding, which includes the, let's see if you want me to go backwards. Yeah. Which includes the Riverside Drive outfall. There's a couple pipelinings in there. The Cypress Drive Stormwater Pond, that was in the, I think that's the second photo that comes up. There it is. That's starting to encroach on the adjacent house. Swale work is also included. Swale restoration is also included in there. Those are the major.
So not all these projects are going to be done next year. It's part of the capital 5-year plan as well.
That's correct.
So that 10%, that additional 5% increase is also going to cover some of those additional costs year from year.
That's correct, because there's, as with anything, there's the compounding effect of the increases.
And Molly, maybe the Starbucks wasn't the best analogy, but I guess what it comes down to is we're talking about 85 cents a month per household, which, you know, I know things add up, but to me, the importance of having a strong stormwater system to prevent flooding, to prevent other issues that can affect homeowners adversely, I think 85 cents a month is like I said, it's minimal. And I think the value that we're going to gain in return is more than worth it, so.
Yeah, well, aside
Right,
with what you're
I
expressing.
agree with that, and I obviously, we want to be in a good position financially, but I just want to be, we've raised the water rates, we're raising the, recycle, reuse rates, so it's not just this, it's a bunch of items we're raising this year.
If these were monthly, I would feel differently about it.
Right.
But because it's annually, because I am very aware that we have a lot of residents still that even live on a fixed income. So again, if these weren't annual, I'd feel differently about it.
And I think the councils, I think, have always strived to keep costs down wherever they can across the board. But on the other hand, you do have rising costs of the economy, and that's just a fact of life. So I think we try to minimize the impacts to the extent we can, but again, there's certain things that need to be addressed, need to be done. That's why we put such a big push on grants, obviously, over the last couple of years, which was something that wasn't done prior to Jeremy being here. And because those opportunities are there, and that helps address this issue of trying to keep costs under control and keep them down to the extent that we can.
And I think it's also important to point out, it's not like a usage tax,
No.
It's a surface area tax, right? It's based on the amount of surface area of a property, and the materials and everything to maintain and to repair continues to go up. However, the surface area of my property is not changing. And so I do understand that there is a cost of living increase that will continue to happen year over year. It's just, I think Mr. Prince is making a good point, is we want to make sure we are ahead of it, to make sure that our utilities and operation side is being well maintained. And I would recommend that we do look at it next year to have a really good report to say, how do we catch up if we haven't already caught up?
Yeah.
It's never, or very rarely is it ever politically, good to have to go and raise taxes and stuff, but we've got a responsibility to maintain, all of the infrastructure and stuff throughout the village, in which that's what you're desperately trying to achieve and do and stuff, maintain all of our canalways, all of our water system, our drainage system, our sewer system, et cetera. And, unfortunately, it costs money, and prices are really increasing a lot. I mean, we've noticed some really high increases and stuff in materials and stuff, but there's no sense in going into it. I think that we just have to bite the bullet and do what we've got to do in order to get enough money to go ahead and let's get some of this stuff fixed and get it up to where it becomes maintenance rather than continually having to go in and fix stuff that has been neglected, way prior to you guys getting here. That's the problem that I have seen since I've been on the council here, is the fact that a lot of it was neglected, many years ago, and then now we're paying the price for it. And
if I may, so I think, the staff's recommendation is going to be to take the rate increase that we've recommended. Sounds like council wants to take us a deeper look at it next year, but I think there are some factors that will help play into this. If we get the grant out in the country club, that'll also, take care of some of that swell restoration. We are putting $150,000 of the ARP money into it, so we have some factors that could help long-term, as you're talking about, take care of some of these projects. Short-term, I think this year, we proceed with this rate increase as recommended, and then we will take a bigger look at it as council has desired tonight, to help us get there. So if that helps with anything. We have some good positive things maybe coming with a grant and the ARP funds.
Well, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm almost in tone to agree with you, but we're all going to say, well, we had that conversation last year, and we raised the taxes last year. Now we're talking about having to raise the taxes again this year. I said, golly dog, we're having to raise taxes every year. So I'm saying, just do it and get it done with.
Well, I could venture to say that we haven't done, haven't raised rates in the stormwater in a couple of years. So I think this, for the sake of our residents to take a good step forward. But the other there's another factor that Matt hasn't talked about. I mean, our stormwater crew is a crew of 2 with a leader of Matt, so we can only take so much of a bite of an apple because we don't, obviously we've only got so much staff to do a whole bunch of projects. So, let's take some small steps. This is a step, and we'll take a look at how we can take a bigger chunk of the apple.
But most of those repairs and stuff, though, Jeremy, are contracted out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're not going to self-perform the repair of that canal, I wouldn't think.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, it's
I mean, look at it this way, if any capital asset you own your home, you have to maintain your home. What happens when you don't maintain it? It declines in value, it degrades. So we have the same responsibility, as you've already said, to maintain the infrastructure of the village and do it as efficiently and as economically as possible. And I think that's what everybody's trying to do here, so.
Well, and I'll go along with what the majority rules and stuff, and I'm for favor, let's go ahead and get it done and get it behind us and stuff, but I just definitely want to go ahead and start taking a look at it. I am for going ahead and raising it and being done with it and get enough money in here. Let's get some of these things fixed and stuff rather than putting it off for another year, Jeremy. I mean, I just really feel like we need to go ahead and get a little more aggressive on this stuff and let's get it fixed. A leaky roof, all of a sudden you got a little drop up there and all of a sudden your drywall starts coming down and the water starts gushing down. It floods your carpet, then you got to pull your carpet up, then you got to take your baseboards up, then you just got to start pulling the drywall down. I mean, so that's a little exaggeration, of course, but, bottom line is, we got to get it fixed. And, we got to bite the bullet and get the money and do it.
Committing to taking that deeper look, and he and Matt, and we can move it forward. All right.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
Quickly. Very interesting for me.
Yeah.
Can we make like a special assessment for stormwater for like a 5-year catch-up speed, like an additional $10 or something that is that something that we can do on these bills?
So the stormwater is, that's included as a non-ad valorem assessment on the annual tax. And so where that's a little bit different than having a separate, called a capital fee on the water bill, it's just one item that's on the tax roll. What our code does require is that it be brought at least annually. So I guess what could be done is that it could be brought up and then brought down, unless there's another option that allows a second, which I'm not 100% sure of, to be honest. And one other, I think, important point regarding the non-ad valorem assessment that it is also true for the solid waste is that it's a flat fee unless it's increased, as opposed to the
percentage of
the ad valorem assessment that is based on the value of the property. So as value of property goes up, then revenues go up. The only way revenues go up for solid waste or for stormwater is if that flat fee is increased.
Right.
Yeah, I think rather than a surcharge, if we do the rate increase, let them do the deeper dive, and then come back to us, for the next budget cycle, and we'll see what the assessment is and what the recommendations are at that time.
One more quick question. Do you have the budgets for these, at least for 2022? Do you have the budgets for those projects that are up on the screen now?
That's correct, yes.
You do? Okay. I think part of my problem is I don't disagree with we needed to make sure we have the funds and raise rates if we need to, but I think a lot of the information and charts are kind of high level, and to me, I need more data, more precise numbers to make a comfortable decision. So to me, it's just missing a little bit of information there from a dollar standpoint.
Okay.
For future.
All right. Why don't we close the conversation? Do I have a motion to approve this item?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Okay, in that case.
I'll second it.
All right. Okay, vote to approve? Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
Okay, 3-2, it does pass. And you guys have made the commitment to come back to us with additional detail. I understand what you're asking for, Molly. It'll be in the, when we get the next look at the budgets, I think that'll all be in there, but I understand it wasn't there for this evening.
Yeah, I just can't make that decision.
Okay, so we are moving on to what was 18, now 17. This is to approve a work authorization for the state revolving fund loan. This is also Mr. Hammond.
Still here.
Still here, and you're going to be with us a little longer.
All right. Back in, as we kind of talked about a little bit, back in April, the Water Enterprise Fund was brought before, the 5-year rates. Big aspect of that was funding funding specifically, or at least in large part, the water main replacement program, among other things. And what was included in that financial analysis and financial plan was to fund the first 2 tranches. This would be the first tranche, using the state revolving fund loan program. The state revolving fund loan program provides discounted or lower interest loans to governmental entities for both drinking water and they call it clean water, but it's the wastewater side. So we would be going for a drinking water state revolving fund loan. In order to qualify for those, you have to submit a number of things, including a request for inclusion package, water facilities plan. You have to include the required contract documents when you bid it out, and then you have to have compliance verification that's associated with it. Those are the strings that are attached to get the discounted interest rates. And so this work authorization that's before you now is with Holtz Consulting, who has done this for a number of local entities on this to provide those services for us and take us from cradle to grave on the SRF process.
Okay, council comments, thoughts?
I have
This
none.
this goes to your issue, Bruce, of the replacement of the water distribution system, the piping.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, somewhat.
Yeah, so this is just a part of the method of funding that work. Anybody, any other thoughts, comments from anybody?
This is just funding the consultant to meet the standards.
Right,
for
to apply to, put the whole package together to apply to get the discounted loan, qualify for the discounted loan program. And it's a budgeted item.
Yeah, how much does the loan kind of cost us in interest? 40,000?
Do we know what the loan interest rate would be? I may be subject to fluctuation.
It is. Lately, it's been less than 1.
Cheap.
With the discounted. It's a discounted rate based on the, is it the 10-year T-bill? It's tied to an index. And then they take off when by meeting the requirements, they take off a half a percentage point for this, half a percentage point for that, quarter point for this, which lately has been again less than a percentage point.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next item, Mr. Hammond, then we can, I think we can let you go then. Approve the work authorization with Win & Sons Environmental Construction for stormwater road repairs.
Yep, so again, back in April, there was an approval with Hinterland, the Hinterland group to line a number of segments of stormwater pipe throughout the village. In several of those areas, 3 specific areas, there was road damage that was associated with those, with that failed stormwater pipe. And so this is, now that the cause of those failures has been addressed, our team has worked with Doug to engage our onboard construction contractor, Win & Sons, to complete those road repairs. And those are on Seabrook, Chestnut, and what am I missing? Starboard.
Okay, open for council comments, discussion? Anything on this item? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to the next item. This is Mr. Allen. This is the additional change orders in the amount of a little over $100,000. I think that was actually reduced, was it not?
Yes,
To
sir. So we-
$99,545.
So we were working on this as the agenda was being put out, so, and it was pointed out that they had a markup on the escalation again, so we have provided that update to you. In front of you, you have the list of change orders that have come out since the last time that we went through. If you want to go through each one, we can. I think they have their backup, or we have information for you if you have questions about any of the change orders that have come up.
This is tied to number 15, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that will follow.
I have a question on the contingency. So our contingency is used up,
That's right.
and the contractor's contingency is not.
That's right.
And the way the contract reads, it looks like the material cost escalation could come from the GC's contingency. Has that been discussed or considered?
Yeah, so I did run this by Mr. Davis. I have an email from him basically saying that at the time that there was language in there that we could go after, but also there's language in there that ultimately the contractor has the ultimate authority to use it or not. And so at the time when I got this email, it was, you know, you're paying for it now or you're paying for it, you know, later, whether with the contingency. The contingency is, you know, if it's not used for the contractor, it'll come back to us. And so whether you're paying for it up front or not, I mean, if we spend $100,000 or, you know, if we're just talking about escalation, I mean, if we start using that up, then we're gonna have to credit the contingency or go back and credit it either way. So Mr. Davis didn't think that it was, you know, it's tomato, whether we wanted to do it or not. And he didn't use those terms, that's my terms, so.
That's one of the questions.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm just nervous that these are going to keep coming to us.
Me too.
Yeah, we're hoping not, but, I mean, I know there's been some easing on some of the price pressures. I mean, Bruce, you might even be more familiar with some of what's going on out there.
Well, supposedly it's starting to get a little bit better. We're doing one job, and the general contractor on that job, just the wood package alone, from the time they signed the contract, went up $1.4 million. And, you know, and it's in pipe costs are going up 40%, you know, and but we're hoping and seeing a little bit of reduction in lumber costs and stuff. So things are starting to come down a little bit, but it's still going to take some more time.
Well, I guess my questions are, I mean, the lumber cost on this increases $15,000, but it seems like the majority of these are associated with the 51-day delay and changes to the drawings.
So the 51 days was already covered last meeting.
Right.
You'll see that. So we've already approved that. So you're basically going from 5 down, or the newer ones. So those are your costs that you're looking at.
So on those calendar, the delayed days and stuff there, the 51 and stuff, we still had to pay general conditions for those days, right?
Right.
Okay.
That's a lot.
Yeah. COVID has not been our friend in this regard.
I thought that we had some clauses in the contract and stuff that talked about price increases, Jeremy, and so forth on there.
So and I think this is what Ms. Young has pointed out, the contractor was charging us, and that's why you even have this credit, the contractor was charging us their upcharge on those escalation, if that's what you're referring to. So we have been credited on those.
I saw that credit, yeah, but I thought
price escalations, in our contract, we have to pay for those escalations. The contractor's not going to eat those costs.
It's gray, I think. Well, we have to pay for it, but whether it comes from contingency or not, which is what's gray, it says it can, but if the contractor's saying he doesn't want to, it's a little gray there, but it sounds like he didn't have an issue with it. I don't know why you wouldn't spend that contingency. It's sitting there, it hasn't been touched yet.
Just so I'm clear, if the contractor doesn't spend the contingency fee or amount, when the job's closed, they give that back to us?
It comes back to us. And that's why I think, Keith, I understand your point. It's like, why not use it rather than waiting to get it back?
And transferring money.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me.
But
Well, they sharing any cost savings, right? If I remember correctly and stuff, that they get, you know, if you come in under, but they share in those cost savings. But they also, so it's not a, not to exceed amount then contract.
Rephrase the question, please.
You know, a lot of the contracts and stuff that we enter to, you're locked in on a number. And you know, you got contingency money in there, you know, that you, based on the volume or the size of the contract. And then you got your contingency money in there, and then you have the not to exceed amount.
Right.
In other words, if it goes over that, then it starts getting into their profit and their margin and stuff.
Right.
So this is definitely a not to exceed contract with these guys.
Well,
Yeah.
yes and no, but because that's what we're doing with this, is we're actually upping that GMP because of the price escalation or a couple of these change orders that we've had. So typically you would say, GMP, go do it for this is what the price costs, but because of, you know, it's well documented, the price escalations, you know, all across the country, they're able to call on that and up that GMP.
Just on the material increase,
Right, on that part of it.
not the overall project.
Right.
Well, I know that project I just referred to about the lumber going up.
Yeah.
They're in a litigation with the owner because the owner said, we're not paying for it. You know, this was the price that we agreed to. This is what we signed a contract for. So, you know, sue me. So that's basically what's happening, so.
So they're spending the money anyways.
Huh?
They're spending the money anyways in lawyer fees.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why you have to
Retainer.
know what your contract says.
Yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's 5-0. All right, what is now number 20, formerly 15, is a follow-on to the conversation we just had. Mr. Allen.
So Mr. Dunkley can present this one.
Okay, I'll read this real quick. Resolution 33-21, a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, increasing the fiscal year 2020-2021 capital improvement fund and capital projects fund budgets by increasing revenues and expenditures in the amount of $196,000 to recognize an inter-fund transfer from the capital improvement fund to the capital projects fund.
Yes, Mayor, thanks for allowing me to explain. So in the capital improvement fund, we project to have a fund balance of approximately $300,000, give or take, at the end of the fiscal year. So it is from that fund that we propose transfer of the funding gap in this project, which totals $196,000 to date, which incorporates all of the change orders that were just previously discussed.
Okay.
This should help us to balance out the budget for the project.
Okay, questions from council? Were those monies earmarked in any way for some other project that's now going to be deferred, or?
No, we have all of the earmarked projects, such as acquisition of the rescue. Those have been said and done for. We have paid for those already.
Okay, all right. So this will offset these costs that we've been incurring, at least up till now. Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
We'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And the last item this evening, item 21, this is the time of year when we do an initial vote on the millage rate. And Mr. Allen, I believe this rate is unchanged from the last couple of years, I think.
That's right, so this item is to approve the setting the proposed ad valorem millage rate for the Village of Tequesta fiscal year 21-22 at the rate of 6.629 mils per $1,000 of assessed value, setting the public budget hearing as follows: September 8th, 2021 at 5:30, and approve the tentative budget, and the September 16th, 2021 at 5:30 to approve the final budget. This millage rate does mirror the last 2 years, so we have not increased the millage rate.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, by voting this evening on this item, we cannot exceed this millage rate going forward. We could reduce it, but we're capping ourselves at this rate. Any questions? Any comments? Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If I could point out, September 8th is a Wednesday, and you have a council meeting on Thursday. And normally, this would be on Thursday, but the county commission is having theirs on Friday.
Wednesday.
Do you want
We
to?
have a Wednesday meeting and
Yeah, and the issue there, Lori, you can explain this, what it is, we can't conflict with other budget meetings that are ongoing, yeah, school board and the county. Okay, that closes out the regular agenda. Any other matters anybody would like to bring up?
I've got just a couple of things. Can Jeremy or somebody refresh my memory? Whatever happened and where are we at on the property that's alongside of the railroad track? I know we talked about doing some more stuff and stuff on it with when they wanted to buy it, and then we were going to, maybe keep it and fix it up and plant some trees or something on it. Can somebody tell me where we're actually at with all that?
So I talked to Steve Parker, who's our landscape architect, about doing something along Old Dixie, and I was also going to have him include kind of some plantings and some, landscaping in that property, because that was the last marching orders I got from council.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, we've talked about this corridor project and letting that play out before we did any kind of landscaping along Old Dixie. So, my thought would be that we would include anything we do with Old Dixie. We're going to include that property as far as landscaping and what we'd like to plant. So at this time, unless council has changed direction, our plan is just to landscape that and use it as green space, and there wasn't any intent to sell it or lease it anymore.
So our final decision on it then was not to sell it, obviously.
Right, because
Okay.
the action was to sell. Council did not take that action, so, the marching.
Not all council, because I was in favor of selling it.
Well, when the vote comes out that way, I say council decided, because as a whole, that's what the motion was, so.
I think I agree with you, Bruce. I think as we go forward, we'll see what the corridor project produces, but then I still think it's an open discussion for the future at some point in time.
Yeah, never mind. I mean, there's no sense in going into it now. It's almost 9 o'clock, so we won't talk about it tonight anymore.
Right. You said you had 2 items. Did you get a second?
Yeah, I'm going to not even talk about the other one. I'm just going to go ahead and call it a night.
All right, anybody, any other, Molly?
Was there any update on that cell tower that we talked about, last month? I think?
Yeah, so they came in, the group came in, we met with them, we told them our concerns, Jose, myself, Mr. Chambers. We met with them, told them our concerns. They were gonna go back kind of the drawing board. They're gonna work on kind of like some stealth design, so that way it kind of matches and blends, and they're gonna landscape around it. But, I mean, they're still pretty determined to do that spot. And so, obviously if they meet the code, they are willing to work with us and do whatever they can to make it aesthetically pleasing there. But they're still pretty hot committed there.
Any other comments?
I would just make one quick comment. I just
Yes,
want to
sir.
thank Councilman Young for asking some good questions today. And it's always good to ask questions to a lot of people, and especially the department heads, and it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing. The gentleman who's doing our appraisal, have we received a commitment from him as to when that might be forthcoming?
I have not.
Okay.
There's been some correspondence the last day or two with Nilsa trying to get the densities and all that, but as you know, he had to go back and rework that.
Right.
So I will check. I'll try to get an update on what ETA on that.
Okay, all right.
I do have a meeting with Treasure Coast Planning Council tomorrow, so hopefully I'll be able to offer an update on that too.
Okay, excellent. Chief.
Yeah, Mayor, just to get back to your question about Jupiter Narrows, and I think the Vice Mayor was correct. Though it passed, it's not enforceable because the signage isn't out as of yet. We spoke to them. They don't have an ETA. We'll continue to follow up, and then once we do, I'll let everybody know.
Sounds great. All right, thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I will motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.